Welcome to Old Worlds for Sleep, where history drifts like candlelight through forgotten halls, and stories of power, love, and betrayal whisper you into rest. Tonight, we journey to Victorian England, an age of silk gowns, hidden debts, and royal expectations. There, an American heiress named Charlotte Miller crosses the Atlantic to marry into the crumbling Harrington dynasty. But beneath the glitter of aristocracy lie secrets, ledgers of deceit, mistresses in Chelsea, and a fortune that buys survival, not happiness. This is the Duchess of Harrington Chronicles, a tale of courage, calculation, and the quiet revolution of a woman who refused to be owned. So settle in, dim the lights, let the world fade, and drift through another age, where dreams and history intertwine. The first thing you notice is the sound. Not music or voices, but the hiss of coal smoke seeping through the half-opened window. London, 1895. It clings to your skin like regret. You sit up too quickly and the room sways around you, an unfamiliar ocean of gilt mirrors and velvet curtains. Somewhere below, carriage wheels scrape against wet cobblestones. You remember the crossing, the endless gray Atlantic, the cold salt spray on deck, your mother's last hug in New York, your father's words echoing through the fog. Remember what you're buying, Charlotte, and what they're buying in you. Your gaze falls to the ring on your hand. Gold, heavy, slightly too large. The Duchess of Harrington. The title fits like the ring, expensive, visible, and utterly foreign. A knock. Your Grace. The voice is gentle but trained. Stevens, the lady's maid you met only once, enters carrying hot water and an iron day dress the color of bone. She moves like smoke, efficient, invisible, already part of the house's rhythm. Shall I open the curtains, Your Grace? Sunlight slices in, pale and precise. The air smells of dust and violets. Beyond the window stretch rows of identical houses, Mayfair's cages of privilege. You feel small and enormous at once, as if the entire city were staring back. Stevens kneels to lace your corset. The stays pull tight, ribs shifting, breath measured to someone else's pace. You think of New York mornings, coffee, noise, the freedom of choosing your own shoes, and nearly laugh. The sound sticks in your throat. Downstairs, the breakfast room hums with restrained ceremony. Edward Harrington, the Duke, your husband of 2 weeks, looks up from his newspaper only long enough to nod. He is precise as the silver service around him. Sleep well. Yes, thank you. Pause. We'll call on Lady Harwick at 11. She's to oversee your instruction. Instruction? The season begins next month, he says, turning a page. You must understand how things are done here. We cannot afford another American scandal. The word American lands like an accusation. He continues without looking at you. Harwick will prepare you for presentation. The Queen notices everything. Of course she does. The Queen, society, the press. They all notice everything except the truth, that without your father's millions the Harrington estates would have collapsed years ago. You were purchased to preserve a dynasty. You sip your tea to hide the tremor in your hand. The china rattles softly. Edward doesn't seem to hear. At the far end of the table hangs a portrait, Harrington ancestors in oils. Men in armor, women in lace, eyes all fixed on the same middle distance. You wonder which one sold his daughter first. After breakfast, the butler, Mr. Finch, leads you through the house. 64 rooms, he explains, each with its own purpose, schedule, and staff. He recites them like a litany. The morning room, the blue salon, the nursery awaiting heirs. The nursery door is locked. He doesn't explain why. When you reach the great gallery, you stop. Portraits line the walls, centuries of Harrington women. Near the end hangs a face unlike the rest. Softer, newer, painted in 1872. An American, you can tell by the looseness of the smile. She was the Duchess before me, you ask? Finch inclines his head. Her Grace Margaret, from Boston. Died young, childbirth complications. A chill runs through you. Bought, used, replaced. Finch clears his throat. If your Grace will follow me, the Duke requests you review the household accounts this afternoon. Household accounts, you repeat? Only to acquaint yourself with the structure, madam. Actual management remains His Grace's concern. Of course it does. Still, the phrase lodges somewhere deep. Accounts, structure. The language of numbers, the one thing in which you are fluent, your father saw to that. Back in your chambers, you open a small leather notebook, a habit you've kept since childhood. You write one line. Understand the system before it understands you. Evening falls early in London. Gaslight flickers against the rain-streaked window. Edward dines at his club. You dine alone beneath a chandelier heavy enough to crush you if it ever fell. Stevens pours wine. His Grace will return late, Your Grace. Shall I sit up for him? No, you answer quickly. That won't be necessary. When she's gone, you wander through the silent house, past closed doors and ticking clocks. In the library, the smell of leather and ink wraps around you. 1,000 spines gleam under the lamplight. Histories, sermons, ledgers. You trace a finger along Henry V and think of the line your tutor once quoted, "We are but warriors for the working day." That's all you are now, a worker in silk armor fighting for breath inside someone else's empire. You close the book and whisper to the empty room, "This is not the end of Charlotte Miller." Outside, the fog thickens until London itself disappears, leaving only the glow of gas lamps, like coins scattered across a dark ocean. The next morning begins with the sound of footsteps. Light, practiced, disciplined. "Good morning, Your Grace," Stevens says, gliding into the room before you've even opened your eyes. She carries a silver tray of tea and a bundle of pale fabric so white it almost glows in the dim light. Your body still aches from the ship's motion, from the endless hours of sitting too straight, speaking too carefully. London mornings are gray, wet, and heavy, even the air feels mannered. "Your appointment with Lady Harwick is at 11, Stevens murmurs. "We'll need to begin your toilette immediately." You nod, though your pulse flutters. There is no you here yet, only the shell they're building. The ritual starts. Layers of linen, silk, whalebone. Each step narrated in Stevens's even tone, like a priest reciting a liturgy. Chemise, stays, corset. The stays pull tight, tighter, until your lungs feel like they belong to someone else. You grip the edge of the dressing table, watching your reflection disappear behind the armor of satin. The mirror shows a stranger, a porcelain woman whose spine has been sculpted by etiquette. Her face could belong to any duchess. "Breathe shallowly, Your Grace," Stevens advises. Deep breaths disturb the line of the bodice. You laugh under your breath, but it comes out as a gasp. "Doesn't that make one faint?" "It happens occasionally," she says, perfectly serene. The gentlemen find it quite affecting. The remark hangs in the air, a small, unintentional cruelty. Stevens moves to your hair, brushing it with ruthless precision until it gleams like bronze under the gaslight. Each stroke feels like an erasure. By the time she pins the last curl into its prescribed position, the girl from New York is gone. "Lady Harwick will expect perfect posture," Stevens says, stepping back. "A duchess must glide, never stride." "Glide," you repeat, testing the word. Sounds like drowning slowly. The carriage ride through Mayfair is silent. Edward sits opposite you, reading correspondence, immaculate as always. His gloved hands never fidget. Even his breathing seems rehearsed. "You'll find Lady Harwick exacting," he says without looking up. "She trained half the peerage. Do as she instructs." You force a small smile. "And if I fail to glide?" He glances up then, a flicker of irritation in his gray eyes. "Do not fail." Outside, London unfurls in muted splendor, rows of immaculate facades, every window like a watching eye. You wonder if anyone behind those curtains feels as trapped as you do. Lady Harwick's townhouse smells of starch, lavender, and authority. The woman herself resembles a relic carved from marble, all angles and pale lace. Her voice could cut glass. "Ah, the American Duchess," she says as if identifying a specimen. "We shall see what can be done." What follows is less instruction than indoctrination. You learn the hierarchy of forks, the correct arc of a curtsy, the number of degrees one must incline the head before the queen. Never too low, lest it suggest servility, never too high, lest it imply arrogance. Harwick walks in a slow circle around you, tapping her cane against the floor. "Your accent must be softened," she says. "The British ear is delicate. My father always said clarity was a virtue." You reply before you can stop yourself. Her gaze sharpens. "Virtue, perhaps. Refinement, never." Each correction feels like a chisel strike. Chin lower. Hands visible. Eyes demure but not dull. By the end of the session your muscles burn and your head throbs, but you nod obediently when she pronounces, "Acceptable." Barely. Continued daily practice with your maid. Edward collects you an hour later. In the carriage he seems satisfied, as if your humiliation were proof of progress. "She'll make you presentable," he says. "In time." Presentable. Not admirable, not intelligent, presentable. You stare out at the rain tracing silver paths across the window and imagine each droplet carving a small escape route through the grime. That evening you undress in silence. Stevens moves efficiently, unhooking, unlacing, unmaking you. When she withdraws, you stand before the mirror once more, free of corset and pretense. Your skin bears the red indentations of the day's performance. The stranger in the glass has softened, but she's still there, ghostly, watchful. You lift a hand to your reflection, fingertips meeting cold glass. "I won't disappear," you whisper. The room offers no answer, only the faint ticking of a clock marking the seconds of your new life. Outside, the fog presses close against the windows. Somewhere down the street, a church bell tolls the hour, slow, solemn, relentless. Each chime feels like a heartbeat, reminding you that beneath the corset, beneath the titles, beneath all of London's rigid perfection, blood still moves. And for now, that will have to be enough. Morning comes softly to Harrington House, filtered through curtains so heavy they turn sunlight into obedience. The air smells faintly of lavender polish and burnt coal. Servants move somewhere below, silent, invisible, as if the house itself breathes through them. Charlotte sits at the vanity, watching a version of herself she doesn't quite recognize. The hair arranged in precise curls. The pale silk dressing gown. The quiet dread in her chest that feels like a corset she can't unlatch. A knock at the door. "Your Grace," Stevens says, gliding in with her usual serenity. "Breakfast is served." The word served feels pointed. Everything in this world is served: food, wine, women, fortunes. Charlotte follows the maid down a hallway lined with ancestral portraits. Every painted Harrington seems to watch her pass, measuring the intruder who bought her way into their lineage. The morning room waits below, a cathedral to order. Silver gleams in neat rows, napkins folded with geometric perfection. Edward sits at the head of the table, already immaculate in his morning coat. A newspaper rests beside his untouched coffee. "Good morning, Charlotte." She inclines her head. "Good morning, Edward." He gestures to the seat across from him. "You slept well?" "Well enough." Silence blooms like fog. Only the faint clink of porcelain breaks it. "I met with Lady Harwick yesterday," she says, voice light, polite. "She believes I may yet learn to glide instead of walk." Edward folds his paper carefully. "Lady Harwick is an expert. Do as she instructs. She understands what this family requires." Charlotte bites back a reply. "This family requires money," she thinks, but says only, "Of course." He nods, satisfied. "The garden party is in 3 weeks. Her Majesty will be there. Your manner, your speech, even the angle of your curtsy, they all matter." "They matter to you," she says before she can stop herself. His gaze lifts, sharp, assessing. "They should matter to you as well. You're a Harrington now." Her pulse beats hard in her throat. She lifts her teacup to hide it. "So I am." The butler enters carrying a leather folder. "The household accounts, Your Grace, as requested." Edward glances at her. "Ah yes, I thought you might find them educational." "Educational. Like a museum exhibit." Charlotte opens the folder. Columns of numbers march down the page. Expenses for coal, carriages, staff wages, endless lists of ordered goods. Her eyes move faster now, the way her father trained her. Patterns emerge beneath the ink. A sudden stillness. "Is something wrong?" Edward asks. "No," she says, closing the folder with care. "Only fascinating. The scale of it all." He smiles faintly, mistaking curiosity for admiration. Running an estate is no simple matter. "I doubt New York society prepares one for such responsibility." "It prepares one for many things," she replies evenly. "Especially the cost of appearances." He studies her, the flicker of something unreadable passing across his features. "Indeed." After breakfast, Edward departs for his club. Charlotte remains in the quiet aftermath, tracing a fingertip across the polished table. The reflection of the chandelier trembles under her touch. When she's alone, she opens the folder again. This time she looks deeper. Each entry feels like a whisper. Debts repaid, accounts reopened, luxuries purchased beyond reason. The numbers tell a story, one that smells faintly of desperation. Her father's voice rises in her memory, always follow the money. It never lies. A figure catches her eye, a payment made to a private lender, recurring every month. Another to an address in Chelsea. The handwriting is Edward's. Her stomach tightens. Chelsea. She knows enough of London gossip to guess what sort of lender might live there. A sound from the hall startles her. Footsteps, soft but deliberate. She shuts the folder quickly. Stevens enters, arms full of linens. Lady Harwick will call at 10, Your Grace. She requests that you bring your curtsy book. My what? A small manual of proper forms, ma'am. Stevens sets the linens down, her expression careful. Her ladyship insists that every lady of rank practices before her presentation. Of course she does. As the maid departs, Charlotte glances back at the folder. Her hands are trembling. Knowledge feels dangerous yet intoxicating. She closes her notebook, opens a fresh page and writes. 1. Who receives payments in Chelsea? 2. How much of father's money remains? 3. How long before the dowry is gone? Each question burns hotter than the last. That evening, Edward returns. The sound of his footsteps echoes down the corridor, steady and deliberate. Dinner passes in ritual. Silver, candlelight, polite conversation. He speaks of politics and horses. She answers with smiles and murmured assent. When the servants withdraw, he lifts his glass. You'll do well at the garden party. The Queen favors composure. I'll try to be composed, she says, voice softer than silk. Good. He leans back. England rewards control. She meets his eyes then, and for the first time sees not just arrogance but exhaustion, the kind of strain that comes from holding a crumbling wall with bare hands. Edward, she says quietly, are we? He cuts her off with a small, practiced smile. Don't worry yourself about the estate, my dear. Everything is under control. Under control. The words sound rehearsed. Hello. When he rises to leave for his club, she waits until the door closes behind him. Then she returns to the study, opens the ledger, and stares at the numbers until they blur. Somewhere in the house, a clock strikes 10. Charlotte whispers to the empty room, under control then. We'll see. Outside, the fog has returned, wrapping London in secrecy. And for the first time, the Duchess of Harrington feels something dangerously close to resolve. The rain begins before dawn, a steady, deliberate sound against the window panes. London never quite wakes, it simply shifts moods. Gray light spills across the room, catching on the gilt frame of the mirror, the edge of Charlotte's wedding portrait, and the small leather-bound folder she left on the desk the night before. She shouldn't have brought it upstairs. But the thought of those numbers, of that address in Chelsea, has haunted her all night. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw the neat inked lines of her husband's handwriting, precise as his speech, cold as his smile. When Stevens enters with the morning tea, Charlotte is already dressed. You're up early, Your Grace. I couldn't sleep. She tries to keep her tone light. Has His Grace left for his club? Not yet. He breakfasted in the library. Of course he did. A plan forms before she can second-guess it. Stevens, I'd like to walk in the gallery after tea. Please tell Lady Harwick's coachman I may be late for today's session. Yes, Your Grace. Stevens curtsies and withdraws. Charlotte counts to 10, then rises. The corridor outside her chambers is empty, servants busy below, Edward occupied with letters and cigars. She moves quietly down the stairs, heart hammering so loudly she's sure it must echo through the house. The study door stands half closed. Through the crack, she glimpses Edward's profile, straight, calm, absorbed in his newspaper. He looks utterly at peace, as though the world itself were obedient. She waits until he turns toward the window, then slips past the open doorway and into the adjacent library, the smaller one no one but she seems to use. This is where she'd first seen the ledgers. The memory pulls her to the same shelf of Shakespeare volumes, their spines gleaming faintly in the dim light. Henry V, Othello, The Tempest. The plays are arranged too perfectly. Her fingers trace along the leather until one book shifts slightly under pressure. Henry V. Her pulse spikes. She pulls it from the shelf. It's heavier than expected. As she opens it, a small brass key tumbles onto her palm. The sound, a delicate metallic click, feels impossibly loud. She glances toward the hall. Silence. Every instinct screams that this is folly. And yet she can't stop. The key is small, ornate, old. It must belong to something nearby. She turns toward Edward's desk. The bottom drawer has always been locked. The key slides in as if it's been waiting for her. A soft click. The drawer opens. Inside, several leather-bound ledgers, edges gilded but worn. She lifts the first one out. The handwriting is familiar. Edward's. Numbers. Endless columns of them. Income, expenditures, debts, loans. The entire anatomy of the Harrington estate laid bare. For a moment, her training takes over. Her father taught her this language, the secret rhythm of ledgers, the way profit and loss speak when you read between the lines. She scans the pages. Mortgages, overdue interest, failed investments, gambling losses, loans from private lenders at ruinous rates. It takes her a moment to see the pattern. Then her stomach turns to ice. Before the wedding, ruin. After the wedding, resurrection. Every debt vanished within a week of her father's transfer of funds. Her dowry. Her father's millions, gone to buy back the Harrington legacy. She flips to the next ledger. The pattern continues, but now the numbers bleed red again. New loans. New debts. Money flowing out as quickly as it came in. And at the bottom of each month's page, a payment to L. Large sums regular to an address in Chelsea. A mistress. Or worse, a creditor. Either way, betrayal. Her pulse pounds in her ears. She shuts the ledger and locks the drawer again, returning the key to Henry V. Her hands tremble as she replaces the book. Just as she steps away, she hears footsteps. Edward's voice. Charlotte. Her breath catches. He's in the doorway now, surprise flickering into suspicion. What are you doing in here? Think fast. I was looking for something to read. Her voice sounds steady, almost convincing. Lady Harwick suggested I study English history. I thought Shakespeare might be a good place to start. His gaze travels to the shelf, to the book still slightly out of line. You've never cared for history. I'm learning, she says, forcing a smile. You always say the Harringtons are history. For a heartbeat, the silence stretches too long. Then he smiles, thin, controlled. Indeed we are. He steps closer, brushing a speck of dust from her sleeve with the intimacy of ownership. Next time, ask before entering my study. Some things here are not meant for casual perusal. I'll remember that. He studies her face. You look flushed. Just a slight headache. Then rest. I wouldn't want you unwell before the garden party. She nods and moves toward the door, pulse still thundering. As she passes him, she feels his eyes on her back, cold, weighing, uncertain. In her room, she collapses onto the edge of the bed. Her reflection stares back from the dressing mirror, pale, composed, trembling. She whispers to herself, "You fool." But beneath the fear, something else stirs, something sharper. Knowledge. Her father's voice returns, calm and merciless. Never trust anyone else with your money. Not even your husband. Especially not your husband. She opens her notebook and writes one line. He's burning through the dowry. I have 5 years at most. Her hand tightens around the pen. Outside, the rain beats harder against the glass, like knuckles on a locked door. Charlotte lifts her chin. Then I'll unlock it myself. The morning of the garden party dawns bright and merciless, as if London itself wants to remind Charlotte that no secret can stay hidden under a sky like this. Every surface in Harrington House gleams. The brass knobs, the silver trays, even the eyes of the servants seem polished for inspection. Charlotte barely slept. Her dreams had been filled with ledgers that bled red ink and a key that would not stop turning. Now, as Stevens laces her into a gown of cream silk embroidered with pearls, she feels the same tightening inside her ribs that the corset creates on her body. The embroidery came from France, Your Grace, Stevens says softly. It belonged to the late Duchess. The late Duchess. Another American bride, painted on the wall of the gallery, forever smiling, forever dead. Let's hope it brings better luck this time, Charlotte murmurs. The hairpins bite into her scalp as Stevens fixes each curl into place. Every touch feels like a reminder of what she's expected to be, flawless, silent, ornamental. Edward appears in the doorway, immaculate in his morning coat, a white rose pinned to his lapel. He surveys her with the detached eye of an art collector inspecting a purchase. "Satisfactory," he says at last, which Charlotte has learned is his highest form of praise. "The carriage is waiting. We mustn't keep Her Majesty." He offers his arm. She takes it. His hand is steady, hers is not. Buckingham Palace looms like a carved mountain of marble and shadow. The gardens beyond it stretch out in impossible order, flowers aligned by rank, trees trimmed into obedience. A string quartet plays something graceful and forgettable. The air is thick with perfume and ambition. Aristocrats drift in clusters across the lawns, their laughter brittle, their smiles sharpened to points. Charlotte recognizes faces from Lady Harwick's endless instruction. The Countess of Warwick, the Duke of Devonshire, the Earl of something she's already forgotten. Edward leans close. "Remember, speak only when spoken to." The Queen notices everything. "She must be exhausted," Charlotte says dryly. He doesn't smile. The line to meet the Queen moves slowly, each introduction a small performance. When it's their turn, Charlotte's heart hammers so loudly she's sure the Queen must hear it. Queen Victoria is smaller than Charlotte expected. Round, black-clad, her face pale and formidable, eyes bright as glass. Edward bows. "Your Majesty, may I present my wife, the Duchess of Harrington." Charlotte sinks into her curtsy, every lesson from Lady Harwick burning in her muscles. "Your Majesty." The Queen's gaze lands on her. It feels like standing before a mirror that reflects every flaw. "So," the Queen says, "you are the American bride." "Yes, Your Majesty. From New York, we understand." Charlotte inclines her head. "Yes, ma'am." The Queen studies her for a moment longer. "We have met several American ladies of late. Distinctive creatures. Are you finding England much changed from home?" "Different, ma'am," Charlotte says carefully. "But difference can be instructive." Something flickers in the Queen's eyes, a spark of amusement perhaps. "Diplomatic," she says. "We shall watch your progress with interest." It is over in moments, but Charlotte feels as if she's been cross-examined by history itself. As they move away, Edward exhales softly. "You did well. She spoke to you longer than most. Then I suppose I've been examined and not yet condemned." He gives her a thin smile. "Not yet." The rest of the afternoon is a blur of introductions and flattery. Ladies who once ignored her now offer invitations. Men who barely glanced her way before now speak of business, art, politics. Every smile feels like a transaction. And then, through the glittering crowd, she sees him. Lord James Winters. Tall, fair, his expression equal parts curiosity and mischief. He moves through the party with the ease of a man who belongs everywhere and answers to no one. "Your Grace," he says bowing. "You've managed to charm even the Queen. That's no small feat." "You were watching me?" she asks before she can stop herself. "Among others." His eyes glint. "But you held your own." Edward appears at her side, jaw tight. "Lord James, I wasn't aware you'd returned from Kent." "I came for the festivities," Winters says smoothly, "and to see how well America is teaching England its manners." Edward's smile is sharp. "We have enough teachers, thank you." The two men exchange pleasantries that sound like threats. Charlotte stands between them, feeling the heat of something unspoken pass from one to the other. When Lord James takes his leave, Edward's hand tightens on her arm. "Avoid that man," he murmurs. "He's too fond of foreign wives." "Foreign or independent?" Charlotte asks. "Both." His tone leaves no room for argument. Hours later, back at Harrington House, she stands before the mirror, the pearls of her gown catching candlelight. Edward speaks from behind her, already removing his cufflinks. "You should be pleased," he says. "The Queen's approval will secure our place for years to come." "Our place," she repeats. "Yes, the Harrington legacy will continue." Charlotte meets her own reflection's gaze. Her voice is soft but steady. "If the money holds." Edward freezes just for a heartbeat. Then he laughs too quickly. "You think like a merchant, my dear. Leave the finances to me." She turns to face him fully. "Perhaps I will. And perhaps I won't." Something cold and sharp flashes between them, a spark of battle quietly declared. He studies her, searching for the demure bride who crossed the ocean. She's gone and he knows it. "Be careful, Charlotte," he says finally. England doesn't forgive women who forget their place. Then I suppose I'll have to find a new one. He leaves without answering. The sound of the door closing is softer than thunder but louder than rain. Alone again, Charlotte unpins her hair, one pearl at a time. Each pin falls like a decision. She has met the Queen and survived. She has seen her husband's secrets and remained silent, so far. But silence is not surrender. In the mirror, the Duchess of Harrington smiles a calm, perfect smile. Beneath it, Charlotte Miller begins to plan. The morning after the garden party arrives in a haze of pale sunlight and exhaustion. London's fog has lifted, but the heaviness remains, not in the sky this time but in Charlotte's mind. The Queen's words, the polished smiles, the glittering applause of society, all of it feels distant, already fading into memory. But one thing lingers: Chelsea. She can't stop seeing the word at the bottom of the ledger, written in Edward's hand beside the letter L. That and the quiet fury beneath his politeness when she mentioned money. Stevens helps her dress for the day, layering pale blue muslin over a corset that seems tighter than usual. "You were a triumph yesterday, Your Grace," the maid says softly. "London papers will sing your praises." Charlotte gives a small, practiced smile. "And what do they sing when the song is over?" "I wouldn't know, ma'am," Stevens replies carefully, pinning a strand of hair. "The songs usually last longer for those who pay the musicians. That earns the faintest laugh." Sharp girl. Observant. When Edward departs for his club, Charlotte's composure drops like a mask. She crosses to the writing desk, opens her small notebook, and adds a new line beneath yesterday's list. 4. Find Chelsea address. She hesitates, then underlines it twice. By mid-morning, she's in the carriage, veiled, gloved, her name unspoken. She's told Stevens she's visiting Lady Ashford. Instead, she instructs the driver to stop near Sloane Street, pretending it's for shopping. The man, used to aristocratic whims, asks no questions. The farther they drive, the narrower the streets become. Gone are the marble facades and uniform gardens of Mayfair. Here, brick houses lean toward one another like conspirators. Laundry flaps between balconies. Coal smoke hangs low and sour. When the carriage halts, Charlotte steps out into a different London, one that feels alive in a way her world never does. She walks slowly, scanning numbers until she finds it, 18 Norbury Lane. The same address from the ledger. The house is modest but well kept, the sort of discreet comfort that only money can maintain without drawing attention. Curtains drawn. Brass polished. A fresh bouquet visible through the window. She stands there for a long moment, gloved hand resting on the fence, her heart pounding like a guilty thing. What did she expect? That Edward's secrets would wear a face? A woman opening the door, smiling that familiar, intimate smile? She doesn't have to imagine it for long. The door opens. A woman steps out, adjusting her hat. Mid-30s, beautiful in a tired, deliberate way. Her gown is fashionable, though not new. The color, a shade of burgundy Charlotte has seen before, nearly matches the lining of Edward's favorite waistcoat. The woman calls back into the house. "I'll return by evening." Her accent is refined. Educated. Not a servant, not a shopkeeper. Charlotte watches as she hails a hansom cab, gives the driver an address, and disappears into traffic. Only when the cab turns the corner does Charlotte realize she's gripping the fence so tightly her knuckles ache. There it is, the truth she suspected and dreaded. L is real. Flesh and blood. The payments are not charity or business. They are something more personal, more poisonous. She forces herself to breathe. She mustn't be seen. She steps back, blending into the flow of pedestrians, working women, errand boys, the city's heartbeat pulsing around her. For the first time, she feels strangely alive. By the time she returns to Mayfair, her gloves are smudged, her shoes lightly dusted from the street. Stevens looks surprised to see her so early. Was Lady Ashford not at home? She was occupied, Charlotte says. We spoke briefly. Stevens nods, sensing more but saying nothing. When she's alone again, Charlotte goes to the window, staring out at the carriages and polished facades that hide 1,000 quiet scandals. She understands now what kind of world she's married into. A world where betrayal wears perfume and manners, and money is the only thing that matters. She sits at her writing desk and opens her notebook again. 5. L. Female, approximate 35, address confirmed, 18 Norbury Lane, Chelsea. 6. Purpose, mistress, most likely. Verify details before confrontation. She stares at the words until the ink bleeds slightly, then adds another line below. 7. Never confront without leverage. Her father's voice again, steady, pragmatic, unyielding. Knowledge is power, but timing decides who lives to use it. That evening, Edward returns early, which he rarely does. He finds her in the drawing room, reading by the fire. "You left the house today," he says lightly. "Harwick mentioned your absence." "Shopping," she replies, closing the book with care. "A lady must be properly attired, especially after meeting the Queen." He studies her face. "I trust the excursion was fruitful?" "Very." Her tone is mild. "I discovered exactly what I was looking for." Something in her voice makes him pause, just for a heartbeat. Then he smiles, that same perfect, polished smile. "Good. I'll expect to see the results at the Devonshire dinner next week." He moves toward the door. The smell of tobacco and bergamot lingers behind him. When he's gone, Charlotte exhales slowly. The conversation lasted less than a minute, but it confirmed everything she needed to know. His composure is fraying. His control, like his finances, has cracks. She turns back to the fire, watching the flames curl and devour the wood. There's beauty in destruction when it's contained. She whispers to the empty room, "You have your secrets, Edward. So do I now." The ledger, the mistress, the lies. They are no longer threats. They are tools. And Charlotte Miller, Duchess of Harrington, has just learned how to use them. 2 days pass before the invitation arrives. Thick paper, elegantly embossed, sealed and wax stamped with a rose. The handwriting is unmistakably feminine, graceful, deliberate. "Lady Catherine Ashford requests the pleasure of your company for tea Friday at 4 o'clock. Charlotte reads it twice, uncertain. Catherine Ashford, one of the women she'd seen at the garden party. Beautiful, self-possessed, and American. The whispers called her the Duchess who refused to fade. Edward glances at the card across the breakfast table. "Ah, Lady Ashford. A sensible connection. You do well to attend. She keeps an excellent house and a tolerable mind." A tolerable mind? She's clever, he concedes. Too clever, perhaps. But she's harmless now that her husband's in Scotland. Charlotte smiles faintly. "Then I suppose she and I shall get along perfectly." Lady Catherine's townhouse in Grosvenor Square feels like stepping into another world. Still aristocratic, but warmer, more alive. No portraits glaring from the walls, no oppressive silence. The air smells of tea and fresh lilies rather than dust and propriety. Catherine herself greets Charlotte with a knowing smile. "Duchess of Harrington," she says, taking her hands. "Welcome. I've been wanting to meet the woman who held the Queen's attention for nearly 3 minutes." Charlotte laughs softly. "It felt like 3 hours." "Then you've already learned that time bends differently in English society." Catherine leads her through to the drawing room, where 3 other women sit around a low table. Charlotte recognizes them from the garden party: Clara, Duchess of Bruton, Emma, Countess of Winchester, and Sarah, Marchioness of Broughton. All American. All watching her with an interest that feels sharper than politeness. "Ladies," Catherine says smoothly, "our newest recruit." "Recruit?" Charlotte repeats. Emma's smile is quick, dangerous. "You'll see soon enough." Catherine pours tea, her movements elegant but deliberate. "We're all here for similar reasons, my dear. We crossed the ocean, traded our father's fortunes for titles, and woke up realizing we'd bought cages with gilt bars." Charlotte's teacup stills midway to her lips. "You mean, wives of Englishmen with empty coffers," Clara finishes dryly. "The newspapers call us dollar duchesses. They think it's romantic. It's arithmetic." Sarah leans forward. "Your husband's estate, how fares it?" Charlotte hesitates. "Comfortable, I suppose." Emma's eyes glint. "Suppose? That's an interesting word." Catherine touches her arm gently. "Forgive us. We've all been where you are. Learning that a title doesn't always come with stability. Or honesty." Charlotte's guard falters. These women speak with the calm precision of experience. "And what did you do?" she asks quietly. "We adapted," Catherine says. "We learned the rules of their game and wrote our own." Clara smirks. "I manage my husband's accounts now. He believes it was his idea." Emma adds, "I control all funds from Chicago. When my Earl grew too creative with them, I reminded him that insanity can run in families, and doctors can be bought. Charlotte blinks. You threatened him? I educated him, Emma corrects. Sarah's tone is softer. We learned that independence isn't given. It's taken. Carefully. The room hums with quiet power. For the first time since arriving in England, Charlotte feels something like safety. Catherine sets down her cup. Now tell us, Duchess of Harrington, what keeps you awake at night? The question hangs between them like a challenge. Charlotte could lie. She could smile and say she's merely adjusting to English weather. But the truth presses too hard against her ribs. My husband is draining my dowry, she says finally. And there are payments, monthly, to someone in Chelsea. A woman, I think. No one gasps. No one feigns shock. Instead, a silence of understanding falls across the table. Clara breaks it first. So it begins. Catherine nods slowly. You did well to find out. I went through his ledgers, Charlotte admits. I shouldn't have. Shouldn't have. Clara laughs, low and fierce. My dear, it's survival. The only mistake would be not looking. Emma's voice is measured. You'll need protection, legal and financial. There's a solicitor in Lincoln's Inn, George Bennett. He's helped several of us secure separate accounts. Quietly, Charlotte hesitates. Wouldn't that be dangerous? Less dangerous than losing everything, Catherine says simply. Or waking one morning to find yourself penniless and replaceable. The words hit hard. Replaceable. Sarah reaches across the table and touches Charlotte's hand. Don't think of it as rebellion. Think of it as insurance. Charlotte exhales slowly. And if he discovers what I've done? Then you do what we all did, Emma says with a small smile. You play the role they expect, until you control the stage. Catherine lifts her cup in a quiet toast. To survival then. Charlotte meets her gaze, steady and unflinching. To survival. The porcelain clinks softly, the sound both delicate and defiant. As she leaves Catherine's townhouse that evening, the city feels different. Less vast, less hostile. The fog rolling through the streets no longer seems to obscure her path but to guard it. In the carriage, Charlotte opens her notebook once more and writes. 8. Contact George Bennett. 9. Secure separate account. 10. Continue playing the part until I no longer have to. She closes the book, the faintest smile tugging at her lips. The Dollar Duchesses, they're not just survivors. They're an army, armed with ledgers and wit instead of swords. And now Charlotte Miller is one of them. The rain has returned, light but persistent, turning London's cobblestones into mirrors. Charlotte watches from the carriage window as the city passes. The same streets, the same faces, yet everything feels altered. The meeting at Catherine Ashford's house lingers in her mind like a flame that refuses to go out. For the first time, she doesn't feel entirely alone. For the first time, she has names. Allies. A plan. Back at Harrington House, the clock in the hall strikes noon. Edward has gone to his club, leaving behind the usual silence. The kind that feels like a warning, not peace. Charlotte takes her tea alone in the morning room, rehearsing a dozen new versions of herself in her mind. The obedient Duchess, the careful spy, the woman her father raised. When the butler appears with a calling card, she almost doesn't notice. Your Grace, Mr. Finch says, a visitor. Charlotte glances up. Who? He hesitates. Lord James Winters. The name stills the air between them. Charlotte forces composure. Show him in. Lord James enters with an easy grace that makes the room feel less rigid. Rain darkens the shoulders of his coat, and his gloves gleam with moisture. Your Grace, he says, bowing slightly. I hope I'm not intruding. Not at all, she replies, gesturing to the settee. I thought gentlemen preferred clubs to drawing rooms on rainy afternoons. Usually, he says with a faint smile. But there are conversations best had without witnesses. That catches her attention. Conversations. He removes his gloves and meets her eyes. You've met Catherine Ashford. Her heartbeat stumbles. You know about that? I was the one who arranged your introduction. Charlotte sits back, absorbing the revelation. So you're part of their circle? I prefer to think of it as our circle, he says, voice low. The Dollar Duchesses trust me as much as they trust any man, which isn't saying much. You're unusually candid for an Englishman. He laughs softly. I've been accused of worse. The tension in her chest eases just slightly. He's different from Edward, lighter, more human. And yet she can't afford to trust easily. What exactly is your interest, Lord James? He studies her before answering. Let's call it moral curiosity. I've watched too many of your countrywomen arrive with fortunes and leave with regrets. You deserve better than to become another headline in the Times. Better? She echoes. In England, better is rarely offered to women. It's taken. His smile fades. Then perhaps it's time you started taking it. The words hang there, daring her to claim them. They talk for nearly an hour. About politics, investments, and the invisible economy that runs beneath aristocratic decorum. Lord James speaks fluently of law and leverage, his tone always measured, never patronizing. There's a solicitor you can trust, he says at last. George Bennet. Discreet, efficient. He's helped several of your compatriots secure what's rightfully theirs. I've heard the name, she admits. Then don't waste time. Men like Edward don't slow down when they see a cliff coming. They accelerate. She flinches at the accuracy of it. If he finds out, then you'll have already protected yourself, he interrupts gently. The moment you begin, you stop being his property and start being a problem he can't solve. Charlotte feels something inside her shift, the old fear breaking against the shore of new purpose. You make it sound easy. It's not, he says, but it's necessary. The clock chimes softly, reminding them how long they've been talking. He stands. You should know, he adds, adjusting his coat. I'm not your enemy. I'm not sure I can afford friends. Then let's call it a professional alliance. She hesitates. Why help me? For a moment, his expression softens. Because I once had a sister who married for a title. She never learned what you're learning now, that power is the only dowry worth keeping. Charlotte studies him, the steady confidence, the gentleness that hides steel. And what became of her? She's gone, he says simply, and her fortune went with her. A beat of silence. Then she nods. Thank you, Lord James, for the warning and the advice. He bows. When you see Bennet, tell him I sent you. He'll understand. At the door he pauses. And Duchess, whatever you decide quickly. Men like your husband sense change the way hounds scent blood. When he's gone, Charlotte remains standing in the middle of the room, pulse racing. A professional alliance. That's what he called it. But beneath the calm civility of the phrase, she felt something electric, respect, recognition, the acknowledgement of equals. She sits, takes out her notebook and writes. 11. Contact George Bennet, via Lady Catherine. 12. Trust Lord James, cautiously. Then she adds one more line, almost without thinking. 13. Stop surviving. Start playing. That evening, Edward returns home in unusually good spirits, humming under his breath. He talks at length about a potential investment, a horse stable or a racing syndicate. His excitement is almost boyish. Charlotte smiles where appropriate, laughs when required. All the while, she sees the image of 18 Norbury Lane, the woman in burgundy, the ledgers lined with red ink. When Edward kisses her hand before dinner, she feels nothing. Only calculation. She raises her wineglass. To success, Edward. He smiles, not seeing the irony. To the Harrington name. The crystal touches with a soft, clear chime. He drinks. She doesn't. Her mind is already elsewhere, in a small office near Lincoln's Inn, where she will soon meet a solicitor named George Bennet and begin rewriting the rules of her marriage. The Duchess of Harrington plays her role perfectly, but Charlotte Miller has just made her first move. The next week dawns with a strange kind of calm. Edward leaves early for his club, unaware that the quiet breakfast table he abandons will become the starting point of his undoing. Charlotte sits a while after he's gone, the spoon in her cup tracing circles through the cooling tea. Her hands no longer shake. The fear has settled into something colder, sharper. Focus. She opens her notebook. The words stare back at her. Contact George Bennet. Today is the day. At 11, a carriage stops discreetly in front of Catherine Ashford's townhouse. The curtains are drawn, the street empty except for a milk cart rattling in the distance. Catherine greets her with a conspirator's smile. Ready? Charlotte nods. As I'll ever be. Good. We'll say we're shopping. She gestures to Emma Winchester and Sarah Broughton waiting by the window, both dressed elegantly, both carrying empty hat boxes. It's It's a charade so seamless it feels like performance art. 3 fashionable ladies off for an afternoon of luxury, not strategy. Within the hour, their carriage is weaving through Lincoln's Inn Fields, stopping before a narrow stone building with discreet brass lettering. George Bennett, solicitor. No footmen announced them. No liveried attendants. Just a small door and the faint smell of ink. Bennett's office is tidy and severe, lined with legal tomes and a single potted fern that looks like it's never been watered. The man himself rises from behind a desk, mid-40s, composed, eyes sharp behind spectacles. "Ladies," he says, bowing slightly. "Lord Winters sent word. You must be the Duchess of Harrington." Charlotte meets his gaze without flinching. "I am." "Then please sit. I understand you wish to secure your financial independence." The bluntness startles her. "You make it sound simple." "In principle it is," Bennett says, steepling his fingers. "In execution, perilous." Catherine chuckles softly. "That's what makes it interesting." Bennett opens a folder already prepared with papers. "I've reviewed your husband's holdings. The Harrington estates are deep in debt. They've survived only because of your father's settlement. Without intervention, your dowry will vanish within 5 years, possibly sooner if your husband continues his habits." Charlotte exhales slowly. "I know about the payments." "To Chelsea?" His brow lifts slightly. "You're better informed than most of my clients." "I make it my business to be." He nods approval. "Then we can proceed directly. The goal is to isolate a portion of your assets, say half, from the Harrington accounts into holdings in your name. American trusts are ideal, discreet, legally distinct, and unreachable by your husband without your consent. Is that even legal?" Charlotte asks. "Barely," Bennett admits. "But law bends when one knows where to press." He slides several documents toward her. "These authorize the creation of a private account in New York, through your father's bank. The transfers will appear as investment adjustments, routine, invisible. We'll move small amounts weekly to avoid scrutiny." Emma leans forward. "How long before it's safe?" 2 weeks. After that, even if His Grace suspects, he won't be able to touch it." Charlotte turns the pen in her hand. "And if he finds out before?" Bennett's gaze doesn't waver. "Then you'll need somewhere to go. Catherine has already offered her house. She's familiar with such contingencies." Catherine smiles faintly. "We call it insurance." Charlotte looks from one woman to the next. These Americans who've learned to survive behind marble walls and polite lies. "You've all done this?" "Every one of us," Emma says. "Different amounts, same reason." Sarah adds softly, "We don't steal. We reclaim." Bennett adjusts his spectacles. "Shall we proceed, Your Grace?" Charlotte hesitates only long enough to steady her breath. "Yes." The pen feels heavy in her fingers. Her signature, Charlotte Miller Harrington, looks strange in this room, both foreign and powerful. Each stroke is an act of rebellion disguised as paperwork. Bennett seals the documents with a wax stamp. "It's done. The first transfers begin tomorrow." "That easily?" she whispers. Power seldom announces itself, Duchess. It hides in signatures and silence. The words settle deep. As they rise to leave, Bennett adds, "You'll need to secure your jewelry, heirlooms, anything portable. Store them in a deposit box at the bank, not here. Consider what you can carry if you must leave suddenly." The room stills. Charlotte realizes what he's saying. "If you must run." Catherine squeezes her arm. "It's precaution, not prophecy." Charlotte nods, though her throat tightens. "Understood." Back in the carriage, the mood shifts from tension to quiet triumph. Emma fans herself lightly. "Well, that was easier than expected." Catherine laughs. "That's what courage often feels like afterward." Charlotte watches London slide past the window, the city suddenly alive with meaning. The fog, the bells, the endless hum, they're not the sounds of her confinement anymore. They're the sounds of a stage she's beginning to master. She touches her notebook, the ink from her earlier entries smudging faintly beneath her thumb. A new line forms in her mind. 14. Half secured. The rest, patience. For the first time in weeks, her chest doesn't feel like a cage. When she returns to Harrington House, Edward is waiting in the drawing room. "How was your shopping?" he asks, voice casual, too casual. "Successful," she replies smoothly, setting her gloves aside. "A few pieces from Liberty's. Nothing extravagant." He nods, smiling that thin, unreadable smile. Good. We must be prudent after all. She feels the irony like a knife under silk but keeps her expression serene. Of course. As he turns back to the fire, Charlotte studies him. The posture of control, the ease of a man who believes his world is still intact. He has no idea what she's done. No idea how much smaller that world has just become. When she finally retreats to her room, she closes the door and exhales a long, steady breath. Then she whispers to herself, almost reverently, "It's begun." The following days unfold with unnerving precision. Each morning, Charlotte sits at the breakfast table across from Edward, smiling through the thin veneer of marital normalcy while her mind works behind her calm expression. Every polite exchange hides calculation. Every sip of tea conceals a secret. By now, Bennet's transfers have begun. Quietly, invisibly, pieces of her fortune are slipping away from Edward's grasp. Small sums disguised as routine investment adjustments. No one at the bank questions them. The machine of English aristocracy moves too slowly to notice a clever woman's hands at work. Charlotte spends her afternoons attending fittings and teas with other duchesses, never lingering long enough to arouse suspicion. On paper, she is the image of dutiful grace. In reality, she is orchestrating a quiet revolution. At Lady Harwick's salon, the talk is of pearls and politics. Her Majesty will open the new conservatory next week, Lady Harwick says, eyes sharp despite her age. All the best families will be there, including yours, I trust. Of course, Charlotte replies smoothly. Good, the older woman says. Appearances must be maintained. You are the face of the Harrington legacy now. The irony almost makes Charlotte laugh. If only Lady Harwick knew how literal that statement was. As conversation drifts to scandal and gossip, Charlotte feels a hand brush lightly against her sleeve. She turns, Catherine. The transfers are proceeding, Catherine murmurs. Bennet sent word this morning. Nearly a quarter completed. Charlotte forces her face to remain neutral. Good, she says softly, eyes fixed on her teacup. You're handling this beautifully, Catherine adds. Just remember, power rarely announces itself. It whispers. Charlotte smiles faintly. I've begun to like the sound. Later that afternoon, a letter arrives at Harrington House bearing the discreet seal of Bennet's office. Charlotte reads it in her dressing room with Stevens carefully dusting her jewelry nearby. Your Grace, the second phase has commenced. All is proceeding as planned. Exercise discretion until further notice. To Bennet. She folds the letter, tucks it into a false compartment beneath her jewelry box. There's satisfaction in the ritual, in hiding truth within luxury. But as the days pass, she begins to notice a change in Edward. At breakfast, his questions linger longer than usual. Busy day yesterday? He asks, spreading marmalade across his toast. Quite. Lady Ashford insisted we view the new silks. And? I resisted temptation, she says lightly. Mostly. He chuckles, but his eyes narrow slightly. He's watching her, not the charming kind of attention, but the calculating gaze of a man who suspects something has shifted and can't yet name what. By the third morning, he asks, You've seemed different lately, more confident. Should I be worried? Worried? Charlotte repeats with practiced innocence. About what, Edward? He smiles faintly. That my American Duchess has found a way to outthink me. For a moment, their eyes lock, two predators testing the air. You married me for my mind, she says softly. Didn't you? He laughs and waves it off, but something unsettled flickers behind his amusement. That afternoon, Charlotte visits Catherine again. The drawing room is filled with low conversation, the quiet murmur of alliance. Emma Winchester pours tea while Clara Broughton examines a portfolio of stocks. You look like a woman who's winning, Emma observes as Charlotte sits down. Winning quietly, Charlotte replies. For now. Clara snorts. That's the only way women like us ever win. They share stories, the coded language of survival in a world built for men. Every woman in the room carries the same secret. They are not passengers in their gilded cages but pilots navigating through storm. Have you told Lord Winters? Emma asks, eyes glinting. Charlotte hesitates. Not yet. He's done enough. Besides, the less he knows, the safer he remains. Wise? Catherine says. Secrets shared too soon become leverage. Charlotte nods. I've learned that lesson already. When she returns home that evening, the rain has begun again. The lamps along Park Lane glow like small watchful eyes. Edward is waiting in the study, glass of brandy in hand. "You're late," he says. "The carriage was slow," she answers, unbuttoning her gloves. "I see. Where did you go?" "Shopping," she says simply, then adds before he can press, "with Lady Ashford and Lady Winchester." The names are chosen carefully, reputable, unassailable. He studies her for a long moment, then nods. "Very well. You'll need new gowns for Chatsworth. Make sure they're appropriate." "I'll do my best to live up to the family name," she says with a trace of irony. He doesn't notice. When he finally leaves for his club, Charlotte allows herself a breath of relief. She moves to the writing desk, retrieves Bennett's letter, and burns it slowly over the candle flame. The smoke curls like ink in the air, invisible evidence erased. By the end of the week, half her dowry is secured. The other half remains exposed, but that will change soon. She keeps her movements measured, her tone light, her manner faultless. The servants gossip less now. Her composure has become armor. At night, when the city sleeps, she studies her reflection in the darkened window. She sees not the frightened bride who crossed an ocean, but a strategist, calm, deliberate, dangerous. For years, men like Edward believed power belonged only to them. Now, the Duchess of Harrington knows otherwise. Power, she thinks, isn't taken by force. It's taken by silence. And in the silence of Harrington House, her quiet war continues. The first crack appears not in a ledger or letter, but in a look. Edward's eyes follow her more now, at breakfast, during carriage rides, across drawing rooms filled with guests. Once, she mistook his gaze for indifference. Now it feels like surveillance. He doesn't ask direct questions yet. But every pause, every half-smile carries an unspoken one. "What are you hiding, Charlotte?" The morning sun falls through the tall windows of the breakfast room, painting gold over porcelain. Charlotte pours tea with practiced grace, aware of his silence across the table. "You've been busy lately," he says finally, his tone mild but weighted. She doesn't look up. "Society never sleeps, Edward. Lady Pembroke's dinner, Lady Ashford's teas. I barely keep up." "You always find time for Catherine Ashford." A small, deliberate sip. "She's been kind to me." He nods once, eyes unreadable. "Yes, very kind, I imagine." The spoon in her cup trembles slightly before she steadies it. "Is there something you wish to say?" He leans back, the faintest smile touching his lips. "Only that kindness in this city often comes at a price." Charlotte meets his gaze, calm, unflinching. "Then I suppose I've been paying in good company." He laughs, but it's hollow, brittle. By noon, she's in Catherine's drawing room recounting the exchange. The other women listen intently, their faces tightening at the mention of Edward's tone. "He's suspicious," Catherine says flatly. "You'll need to be careful now." Charlotte exhales. "He hasn't confronted me directly." "He's a man of pride," Emma Winchester reminds her. "He won't accuse until he knows. That's what makes him dangerous." Clara Broughton leans forward, her voice low. "You must assume he's already checking the bank." "They all do when their pride is pricked." Charlotte frowns. "And if he finds something before Bennett finishes?" "Then," Catherine says, "you play the innocent wife, the role he gave you. Deny, disarm, distract. Let him feel powerful again." The thought unsettles Charlotte. "After everything, I must still pretend?" Catherine's expression softens. "Until you've won, yes. Pretending is part of survival." Charlotte stares into her tea, the reflection of her face rippling across the surface. A duchess, a strategist, a liar. That night, a storm moves over London. The house groans with wind. Charlotte lies awake, the fire dimming in her bedroom hearth. Her mind replays every detail, the ledgers, the transfers, the conversations. She's careful, meticulous, invisible, and yet she can feel him circling closer. Near midnight, a sound startles her, footsteps. Slow, deliberate, crossing the corridor outside her door. Then silence. She sits up, listening. The door handle turns faintly as if tested. Then stops. Her heart pounds. She rises, slips across the carpet, and turns the key in the lock herself. The click echoes in the darkness. She waits. Nothing. Only the storm. When she finally returns to bed, sleep doesn't come easily. The next morning, Edward's mood has shifted. He's almost cheerful. Plans for the day? He asks over breakfast as though the night's unease never existed. Lady Dunor's luncheon, she says smoothly, and perhaps Bond Street afterward. Ah, shopping again. He smiles, pleasant, polite, and utterly false. When she leaves the house, the butler offers her a sealed envelope. From Lord Winters, Your Grace. Delivered by hand. Her pulse quickens. She waits until the carriage turns a corner before opening it. Bennet advises caution. The Duke's solicitor has made inquiries. Delay further transfers until confirmed safe. J.W. Charlotte folds the note tightly, her jaw tightening. The news is tightening too. At Catherine's she delivers the message. Bennet is summoned immediately. Within hours he arrives, discreet, composed, his umbrella still dripping from the rain. The Duke's solicitor visited the bank yesterday, Bennet confirms grimly. We must freeze the transfers for now. Charlotte's stomach sinks. How much is already protected? Roughly half, perhaps a little more. Enough to guarantee you independence if necessary. And the rest? Too risky for now. We'll wait until his attention turns elsewhere. Charlotte nods slowly, her hands gripping the armrest. He's getting closer. Catherine's eyes meet hers. Then so must you. That evening, she returns home to find Edward waiting in the study. A glass of brandy sits untouched beside him. Charlotte, he says evenly, we need to speak. Her heart gives one hard, slow beat. Of course. He rises, crossing the room with deliberate calm. I had a rather curious conversation with my solicitor today. Oh, yes. He tells me there have been irregularities at the bank. Small sums transferred under your authorization. Charlotte's pulse quickens, but her expression remains placid. Irregularities? He studies her face. Would you care to explain? She moves closer to the fire, letting the warm light gild her composure. I moved a few investments, she says simply. Lady Ashford suggested diversification. Diversification, he repeats, his tone razor thin. Surely that's sensible, she continues lightly. My father taught me never to keep all one's eggs in one basket. He stares at her, searching for cracks. Your father taught you many things, didn't he? Yes, she says softly. Most of them useful. The silence between them stretches taut as wire. Then Edward exhales, turns back to his brandy and mutters, just see that your diversifications don't interfere with Harrington affairs. Of course, she replies. You have my word. But as she leaves the study, she knows her word now means nothing to him, and his even less to her. In her bedroom that night, Charlotte closes the curtains and lets out the breath she's been holding all day. Half her fortune safe. Half still vulnerable. Edward's suspicion sharpened. The game now balanced on a knife's edge. She looks into the mirror, her reflection framed by candlelight. The flawless Duchess gazes back, serene and untouchable. But beneath the surface she sees the truth, cracks beginning to spread. And through those cracks, Charlotte Miller, the woman her father raised, is breaking through. She whispers to her reflection, voice low but certain. He wants to play games with money and secrets? Then he'll learn who taught me first. Outside, thunder rolls across the city. Inside, the Duchess of Harrington prepares for war. The storm that rolled over London has not truly left. It lingers, in the sky, in the streets, and in the air between them. For 3 days, Edward has been distant but alert. He leaves early, returns late, his footsteps sharp in the hallways, his voice clipped when addressing the servants. The rhythm of the house feels off balance, as though Harrington House itself is holding its breath. Charlotte moves through it all with deliberate grace. She hosts luncheons, attends fittings, writes letters that say nothing and conceal everything. But beneath her calm exterior, tension coils tighter with every passing hour. She knows what's coming. The only question is when. It arrives on the 4th evening. The household has settled after dinner. Rain taps faintly against the tall windows. Charlotte sits by the fire in the morning room, pretending to read when the door opens. Charlotte. Edward's voice, even careful. Too careful. She looks up. Edward. He closes the door behind him, turns the key in the lock. That small sound, click, is enough to set her heart racing. I've just come from my solicitor, he begins, crossing the room slowly. It seems you've been quite industrious. She marks her page with a finger, calm on the surface. I don't know what you mean. Oh, I think you do. His tone sharpens. He showed me records, transfers, investments, movements of funds from the Harrington accounts. You've been siphoning money. My money. Charlotte closes the book, sets it aside. Correction, she says softly. My dowry. His jaw tightens. When you married me, it became mine. That's the law. Then perhaps it's time the law learned to keep up, she says, rising slowly. You've spent recklessly, Edward. Horses, clubs, Chelsea. I simply took precautions. Precautions? He laughs, a harsh, humorless sound. You call theft precaution? I call it self-preservation. The words hang between them like drawn steel. He circles closer. You've been listening to Catherine Ashford and her American friends, haven't you? Filling your head with poison. Women who think marriage is a business negotiation. Charlotte meets his eyes. Marriage is a negotiation, Edward. You negotiated for my fortune. I'm negotiating for my future. He stares at her, shocked by the bluntness. You forget yourself. No, she says, stepping closer. For the first time, I remember exactly who I am. His face darkens. I could ruin you. Do you understand that? One word and society would tear you apart. She smiles faintly. You could, but you won't. Won't I? No, she says quietly, because the same scandal that would ruin me would destroy you. The Queen herself took an interest in me. The newspapers adore their American duchesses. If it becomes known that the great Duke of Harrington gambled away his fortune and lives off his wife's charity, she lets the thought trail off, watching his composure crack. You wouldn't dare, he whispers. Wouldn't I? They stand inches apart now, the firelight flickering between them. His anger, her defiance, two forces locked in fragile equilibrium. The silence stretches until finally Edward turns away, slamming his glass onto the mantel. What do you want, Charlotte? More money? Freedom? Or simply to humiliate me? I want security, she replies. For myself. For whatever future remains when your debts catch up with you. He exhales sharply, shoulders tense. You've already taken half the fortune. Half that you squandered would have been lost within a year, she counters. Now it's safe. You should be grateful. He spins toward her, fury rising. Grateful? You undermine me, betray me, and you expect gratitude? Only understanding, she says softly, and perhaps a little honesty. He falters, caught off guard. Honesty. She tilts her head. The payments to L. in Chelsea, are you ready to be honest about those? For the first time, real color drains from his face. You went through my ledgers. Yes. His hand curls into a fist. You had no right. I had every right, she says evenly. Those ledgers were written in my father's money and my husband's lies. The anger drains out of him slowly, leaving exhaustion in its place. He sinks into a chair, rubbing his temples. You think you've won something, don't you? That this makes you powerful? I don't need to win, Charlotte says. I only need to survive. He looks up, eyes tired, hollow. And what happens when society learns what kind of wife you are? When they whisper about the Duchess who plotted against her husband? They'll whisper anyway, she says. The difference is, I'll still have a future when they're done. For a moment, neither speaks. The fire crackles between them, the only sound in the room. Then Edward stands slowly, straightens his jacket. You're not the same woman I married. No, she agrees. I'm not. He moves toward the door, hesitates. This isn't over. It never is, she says quietly. The door closes behind him with a soft finality. Charlotte remains standing for a long time, her breath coming shallowly, her pulse drumming in her ears. The confrontation had gone better than she dared hope. No violence, no threats she couldn't counter. But it has changed something between them permanently. The masks have fallen. The game is open now. She crosses to the window, looking out over the rain-slicked streets of London. Somewhere beyond the fog, Bennett's office light will still be burning. Catherine and the others will be waiting for word. She presses her fingers to the cold glass and exhales. The battle has begun, not of passion or jealousy, but of strategy and endurance. And for the first time she feels ready. That night, as she prepares for bed, Stevens pauses in her brushing. Your Grace, are you well? Charlotte meets her maid's reflection in the mirror. Quite well, thank you. But the woman who gazes back at her is not the same one who once trembled at her husband's voice. Now she looks like someone who understands power, how to take it, how to wield it, and how to survive it. The morning after the confrontation dawns pale and silent. No storm, no shouting, only stillness, the kind that feels less like peace and more like the pause between chess moves. Charlotte wakes before the servants, staring at the ceiling as the weight of last night settles into her bones. She should feel triumph. Instead, she feels clarity. The lines have been drawn. Edward knows. And now she must play accordingly. At breakfast, the air is brittle. Edward sits at the head of the table, reading the Times as if the world hasn't tilted beneath their feet. He doesn't look at her, but his every movement carries tension. Measured, deliberate, controlled. Charlotte spreads marmalade on her toast with equal precision. She matches his restraint, turning their silence into a performance of civility. Finally, he speaks without looking up. "You'll attend the Devonshire garden party this weekend." She glances up from her tea. "Of course. The Queen's equerry will be there. It's an opportunity we can't waste." She notices how he still says we even as the distance between them grows wider. He folds the paper carefully. "Your presentation last time pleased Her Majesty. We'll build on that. Your role is to charm, not to challenge." Charlotte's lips curve into something that might almost be a smile. "I've learned I can do both." He finally looks at her, a flicker of warning in his eyes. But she meets it calmly, unafraid. Later that day, she meets Catherine Ashford and Emma Winchester at the Ashfords' London townhouse. The salon hums with subdued excitement. Teacups clinking, silk rustling, and strategy whispering beneath polite conversation. "So," Catherine says, "he confronted you." Charlotte nods. "Yes. He knows about the transfers. But he's too proud to expose it publicly." Emma smirks. "Then you've won the first round." "Not yet," Charlotte says. "He's planning something. He's too quiet." Catherine leans back thoughtfully. "Then you plan something louder. Appear invincible. Make him believe your influence only grows." "How?" "Visibility," Catherine replies. "Appear at every major event. Be seen by the right people. Let him fear losing his reputation, not you." Charlotte considers this. "You want me to make myself indispensable." "Exactly," Emma says, her voice low and sharp. "Once society decides you're valuable, Edward can't touch you without destroying himself." Charlotte nods slowly. It's risky but brilliant. She isn't just protecting her fortune now. She's building leverage. That evening, back at Harrington House, she begins her campaign. Invitations are sent, teas, luncheons, charitable committees. She calls on influential ladies, writes thoughtful notes to those who hold power behind closed doors. Each move is deliberate, each word a thread in the tapestry she's weaving. Soon, whispers ripple through Mayfair drawing rooms. "The Duchess of Harrington, quite intelligent, really. Her Grace has such poise for an American. Did you know the Queen herself took an interest in her?" By the end of the week, Charlotte's name is everywhere, mentioned at dinners, praised in gossip columns. And Edward notices. One evening, as she's preparing for a committee meeting on charitable housing reforms, Edward appears in the doorway. "You've been busy," he says. "Productively so." She adjusts a pearl earring. "Hosting committees, courting the papers, visiting Catherine Ashford twice in 3 days. One might think you were running for office." "Don't be absurd," she says lightly. "Women aren't allowed in Parliament." He doesn't smile. "Don't mock me, Charlotte. I know what you're doing." She meets his gaze in the mirror. "Then you should know it's working." His voice lowers. "You think society's approval will protect you?" "I don't think," she says, turning to face him. "I know. The Queen favors me. The Duchesses adore me. If you try to disgrace me, you'll only disgrace yourself." Edward stares at her for a long, silent moment. The man who once thought himself her master now realizing she's become his equal adversary. "You've become very clever," he says finally. "I always was," she replies. "You just never noticed." At the Devonshire garden party, the shift becomes undeniable. Charlotte arrives radiant, cream silk, pearls, and the calm assurance of a woman who knows her worth. The Queen's equerry greets her warmly. Ladies once distant now vie for her attention. Even the Duke of Devonshire himself spends several minutes discussing her views on philanthropy. Edward watches it all from a few steps away, jaw tight, expression unreadable. Later, as they stroll through the rose gardens, he murmurs under his breath, You're enjoying yourself. I am, she says simply. It seems London has finally decided to forgive my American origins. Perhaps, he says. Or perhaps they enjoy the spectacle of a duchess who outshines her husband. She glances at him, eyes cool. If that's the case, you might thank me for improving your reputation. He gives a short, bitter laugh. You've turned our marriage into theater. Then consider me the playwright. That night, long after the carriages have departed and London sleeps, Charlotte stands before her mirror again. Her reflection is steady now, no cracks, no tremors. The fear that once shadowed her has vanished. This isn't merely self-defense anymore. It's strategy, a gambit. She's not playing to survive. She's playing to win. And in the game of titles, wealth, and reputation, she's learned the most important rule of all. The queen is always underestimated until she starts moving. London never sleeps, it murmurs. Through parlors and parlors, through the clink of teacups and the flick of lace fans, words travel faster than letters, and reputations rise and fall in the space between whispers. And lately they whisper her name. The Duchess of Harrington, have you heard? They say Her Majesty smiled at her twice at Devonshire's party. American, you know, but with exquisite manners. Exquisite? Or calculated? The city buzzes with it. Charlotte can feel it even as she moves through the halls of Harrington House. Servants straighten a little taller when she passes. Footmen rush to open doors faster. Invitations multiply on her writing desk like a spreading fire. Luncheons, galas, charitable boards. She has become the subject of London's favorite pastime, fascination. And fascination, as she's learning, is the most dangerous form of power. At Lady Pembroke's luncheon, she sits beside the Duchess of Devonshire, who leans in conspiratorially. My dear, the Queen's Circle is talking about you. Your fresh air in this stale city. Charlotte smiles with practiced modesty. I'm only doing my part for charity. Of course, Devonshire says, sipping her tea. And yet, charity always hides ambition. I rather admire that. Across the table, Lady Dunmore, the society hawk, tilts her head. One wonders if the Duke shares that admiration. A ripple of laughter. Harmless on the surface, but Charlotte knows better. This is how they test you, through smiles sharper than knives. She meets Lady Dunmore's gaze calmly. My husband believes in my abilities, she says. As do I. The older woman's painted brows lift slightly. How American of you. Indeed, Charlotte says sweetly. We do have a talent for innovation. The table chuckles, and just like that, the attack dissolves into applause. Catherine Ashford catches her eye from across the table and gives a subtle nod. Well played. But every whisper of praise breeds equal measures of resentment. By the end of the week, darker rumors begin to slither through drawing rooms. She's too confident for a newlywed. Her influence over the Queen's Circle is unnatural. Edward Harrington has been humiliated in his own marriage. The words sting not because they're untrue, but because they're close enough to be dangerous. Edward, meanwhile, grows colder. He no longer argues. He simply watches, waiting for her to misstep. His pride won't allow him to confront her publicly, but she senses he's seeking other means to regain control. One evening, as she prepares for another charity event, he lingers in the doorway, his expression unreadable. You're enjoying the attention, he says. Attention brings influence, Charlotte replies. And influence helps your legacy. Don't pretend this is for me, he says quietly. I never said it was. He exhales long and slow. You're playing a dangerous game, Charlotte. I learned from the best, she says, and leaves before he can respond. At Catherine's salon the next afternoon, the women are waiting. The air hums with tension. Rumors are spreading, Emma Winchester says bluntly. Men are calling you ambitious. Some are calling you worse. Charlotte takes a steady breath, which means they're afraid. Afraid men act rashly, Catherine warns. And when they act rashly, women like us are the ones who pay the price. Clara Broughton leans forward. You've gained power. Now you must learn control. Choose which doors to open, and which to let others believe are locked. Charlotte looks around the room. These women who were once her teachers, now her equals. If I retreat now, they'll think I was pretending to be strong. And if you advance too fast, Catherine replies, they'll think you've forgotten you're supposed to be graceful. Charlotte smirks. Then I'll be both. Catherine's eyes glint. That's the spirit that made queens. A few days later, at a dinner hosted by Lord and Lady Wexford, Charlotte's newfound balance is tested. Seated beside her is Lord Ravenscroft, a man whose reputation for gossip rivals his appetite for scandal. "I must say, Your Grace," he begins, swirling his wine, "London has taken quite a shine to you. Some even call you the Duchess of Progress." "How flattering," she says, "though progress is rarely appreciated by those standing still." He chuckles. "Touché. But tell me, is it true your husband has given you complete control of the estate accounts?" Her pulse quickens, though her smile never falters. "A duke's finances are his own concern, as are his duchess's." "A delicate answer," he murmurs, almost rehearsed. She turns to him with icy grace. "Then you understand the importance of practice." The table laughs. The conversation shifts. But she feels the tremor beneath the surface. Someone, somewhere is feeding the gossip. And she suspects she knows who. That night, she returns home to find Edward in the study, writing letters. He doesn't look up as she enters. "Busy evening?" she asks lightly. He nods. "Correspondence. Important matters." She studies his handwriting, bold, deliberate strokes. "To whom?" He doesn't answer. When she leaves the room, she glances at the envelope on the desk. The name catches her eye before she can stop herself. Lord Ravenscroft. Her blood chills. So this is how he plans to fight her. Not with arguments, but with rumors. He'll poison society against her, one whisper at a time. Charlotte straightens her shoulders, the flicker of fear hardening into resolve. If he wants to play that game, she'll play it better. Because if London thrives on whispers, then she'll make sure the loudest ones belong to her. Rumors are currency in London, and Charlotte has learned to spend hers wisely. The morning after discovering Edward's letter to Lord Ravenscroft, she no longer feels anger, only calculation. He wants to soil her name? Then she'll bleach it with brilliance. The war is no longer private. It's social. At dawn, Charlotte sits at her writing desk, the pale light of early London filtering through gauzy curtains. Her pen glides across fine paper as she drafts letters. Invitations, thank yous, condolences, the kind that seem harmless but carry quiet purpose. Each one is a thread. Each thread pulls influence closer to her hand. To Lady Pembroke she writes, "Your insights on the Queen's new orphanage project were extraordinary. I hope to host a small gathering in your honor to further the cause." To the Duchess of Devonshire, "Would you consider lending your name to our new charitable committee? London looks to women like us for leadership." To Lady Dunor, her loudest critic, she sends roses, accompanied by a handwritten note. "Your Grace is an inspiration. I am eager to learn from your experience in matters of propriety." It's the perfect trap. Flattery so elegantly spun that even an enemy must pretend to accept it. Within a week, the whispers begin to change. "She's clever, yes, but generous. So refined for an American. Perhaps we misjudged her." Charlotte doesn't smile when she hears it. She simply files the words away as progress. Meanwhile, Edward's attempts to tarnish her reputation stall. Lord Ravenscroft's insinuations fall flat. No one believes a woman favored by both the Queen and Devonshire could be so duplicitous. Edward grows frustrated, his pride bleeding quietly into paranoia. He starts avoiding her, spending more nights at his club, more afternoons visiting acquaintances. But she's done fearing his absences. Now she uses them. Catherine's townhouse becomes the war room. The dollar duchesses gather like generals over maps, except their maps are guest lists and gossip chains. Emma Winchester studies a chart of names Charlotte has drawn. "You've neutralized every voice that matters," she says approvingly. By the time Edward realizes, it'll be too late. Catherine sips her tea. "The only problem with power is that it attracts attention. The more visible you become, the more dangerous his retaliation will be." Charlotte nods. "Then we make his retaliation look like desperation. If he attacks, he loses dignity. If he stays silent, I grow stronger." Clara Broughton chuckles. "A flawless strategy. You've learned our craft faster than any of us." Charlotte allows herself a thin smile. "I had a very good teacher, several in fact. But victory, even partial, demands sacrifice. Each event she hosts drains her energy. Each performance of grace and charm feels heavier than the last. Her words must always sparkle. Her eyes must always shine. Her every movement must reassure London that she's flawless, untouchable, impossible to hate. Behind the smiles, exhaustion gnaws at her. At night, when the laughter fades and the carriages roll away, she sits by her window, alone, peeling off the mask of the perfect Duchess. Some nights she misses New York, not the city itself but the freedom. The noise, the honesty, the lack of walls made of etiquette. In those moments she whispers to herself, "Hold the line, Charlotte. You're almost there." Then one evening a letter arrives, unsigned but bearing a familiar wax seal, Lord Ravenscroft's crest. Inside a single line: "The Duke dines tomorrow at 18 Norbury Lane, Chelsea." The address of L. For a long moment Charlotte simply stares at it, her pulse thudding in her ears. Edward's mistress. The woman funded with her father's fortune. The woman for whom he's risked everything. Her first instinct is fury, a storm that rises fast and burns hot. But beneath it, another thought forms, colder and clearer. Information is leverage. She takes a breath, folds the letter, and locks it in her desk. Then she calls for Stevens. "Have my carriage ready at 8 tomorrow morning," she says calmly. No crest. No footmen. Stevens hesitates. "Your Grace, shall I ask the Duke?" Charlotte's eyes flicker like flint. "No. This visit concerns my business." That night, she lies awake, her mind a clockwork of strategy. If she exposes the affair, she wins sympathy, but loses control. If she ignores it, she remains complicit in her own humiliation. No, she'll do neither. She'll visit L. Not as a betrayed wife, but as a financier inspecting a failing investment. Because Charlotte Miller didn't cross an ocean to be anyone's victim. The following morning, London glistens after rain. The city smells of coal smoke and wet stone. Charlotte's unmarked carriage moves quietly through Chelsea's narrow streets, stopping before a small townhouse with ivy climbing its walls. She steps down, her gloved hand steady despite her pounding heart. A maid answers the door. "Yes, madam?" Charlotte smiles faintly. "Tell your mistress the Duchess of Harrington wishes to speak with her." The maid hesitates, eyes widening, mouth parting in disbelief. "The Duchess of Harrington?" "Yes," Charlotte says calmly, her voice soft but steady. "Tell your mistress I won't take much of her time." The girl nods and disappears down the narrow hall. Charlotte steps inside the foyer, her gloved hands folded before her. The air smells faintly of lavender and smoke, the scent of a home trying to seem grander than it is. Moments later, soft footsteps approach. A woman appears in the doorway, tall, graceful, perhaps 30 at most, with chestnut hair swept into a loose chignon. She's dressed tastefully but plainly. Not the silk-clad seductress Charlotte expected, more a governess than a courtesan. "Your Grace," the woman says, voice cautious but not fearful. "This is unexpected." Charlotte studies her carefully. "Miss Latham, I presume?" A faint smile. "So you know my name." "I know many things, including that you receive generous payments from my husband." Miss Latham exhales, the barest trace of shame in her expression. "Then I suppose there's little sense in pretending." "Pretending would insult us both," Charlotte replies evenly. The woman gestures toward a modest sitting room. "Please come in. I can offer tea, though I suspect you didn't come for conversation." Charlotte steps inside. The room is neat, sparsely furnished, the kind of place maintained on quiet money. There are no luxuries here. No jewels, no vanity, no perfume bottles glittering by the window. This isn't a mistress's lair. It's a refuge. Miss Latham pours tea into 2 mismatched cups. Her movements are graceful, deliberate, the movements of someone accustomed to observation. "I imagine this is awkward for you," she says finally. "Not nearly as awkward as for you, I'd think," Charlotte answers. A flicker of surprise crosses the woman's face. Then she nods. "You're not what I expected." "Neither are you," Charlotte says. "You seem educated." "I was," Miss Latham says quietly, "a governess before." She stops, then smiles faintly. "Before I became a mistake." Charlotte's brow furrows. "A mistake." Miss Latham sets her cup down. "I met Edward at Harrington Park. I was employed to tutor his late sister's children. He was charming then, not cruel, not reckless. Lonely, perhaps. When his father died, the debts began to surface. He came to me for comfort." Charlotte's stomach knots. "And you gave it?" Miss Latham doesn't flinch. "I did. but not for long. The payments you found, they aren't what you think. Charlotte's eyes narrow. Explain. They're not for me. Miss Latham rises and crosses the room. She opens a small door that leads to a nursery. Inside, a child sits at a small table stacking wooden blocks. A little boy, no older than 3. Blonde hair, Harrington blue eyes. Charlotte's breath catches. "This is Henry," Miss Latham says softly. "Edward's son." For a moment, the room goes utterly still. Charlotte feels the air rush from her lungs, the truth settling like ice in her veins. She stares at the boy, a living, breathing fragment of her husband's secret life. Henry looks up at her and smiles shyly, unaware that his existence has just rewritten everything. Does he know? Charlotte asks, her voice barely above a whisper. Miss Latham shakes her head. Edward visits sometimes. Rarely. He doesn't want the scandal. The money pays for rent, food, a nurse. I've refused more. I won't sell his child's dignity. Charlotte swallows hard. Her mind races, the ledgers, the secrecy, the address in Chelsea. It all makes sense now. You could have used this, she says quietly. Blackmailed him. I could have, Miss Latham agrees, but I don't want his ruin. Only the child's future. Charlotte studies her, really studies her. The woman's poise, her sadness, her strength. She realizes with a pang that they are not so different. Both trapped by Edward's decisions. Both surviving in their own ways. What do you want from me? Charlotte asks finally. Miss Latham hesitates. Nothing. But if you intend to confront him, please don't make Henry the weapon. Charlotte meets her eyes. I don't use children as weapons. The two women regard each other in silence. There is no hatred here, only recognition. Two women bound to the same man, both paying for his pride. Charlotte rises. You're a remarkable woman, Miss Latham. I hope you know that. The other woman gives a small, sad smile. So are you, Duchess. But remarkable women often frighten weak men. Charlotte nods once, then looks toward the child. He deserves better than his father's legacy. Miss Latham's eyes glisten. I intend to make sure of it. Charlotte presses a gloved hand to the back of a chair, steadying herself. Perhaps I can help with that. Outside, the air feels sharper. The rain has stopped, leaving the streets shining like black glass. Charlotte steps into her carriage, her mind a storm of calculation and emotion. Edward has a child, a hidden heir, a scandal waiting to explode. She could destroy him with this. One word, one letter to the Queen's circle, and his reputation would crumble. But instead, a different thought takes root. If she protects the boy, discreetly, she gains something far more valuable than revenge. She gains control, because now she knows the full truth. And truth in this world is power sharper than any blade. As the carriage rattles away, Charlotte stares out the window and whispers to herself. You've given me the key, Edward. You just don't know it yet. That night, she sits at her desk, writing under the flicker of candlelight. A letter to Bennett, discreet and precise. Mr. Bennett, please see that monthly remittances of £50 are made to Miss Latham of Chelsea, under my account. No signature. No questions. C.H. When she seals the letter, she feels an unexpected calm. Not triumph. Not bitterness. Something purer. For the first time, her power isn't built on revenge. It's built on choice. London hums beneath a blanket of fog the next morning, thick enough to muffle the sound of carriage wheels. Inside Harrington House, the world feels equally muted. Servants moving quietly, silver clinking faintly, and somewhere above it all, Charlotte's heartbeat steady and deliberate. She has not slept. The truth of Edward's secret child, his heir, replays in her mind like a tune she can't silence. Not with anger now, but calculation. A child changes everything. It means Edward's debts, his name, and his lineage still have value. It means there's leverage beyond money, blood itself. And in a society obsessed with inheritance, that's a currency more powerful than gold. At breakfast, Edward reads the newspaper as usual, the fire casting a hard glow across his face. Charlotte watches him, calm, composed, her cup of tea steady in her hand. Late night? She asks lightly. He glances up. You might say that. A meeting ran long. With Lord Ravenscroft, perhaps? The faint twitch of his jaw is answer enough. Charlotte smiles faintly. You should rest more, Edward. too many late nights and even your lies will start to show. He freezes, eyes narrowing. What did you say? She sets her cup down. I said you look tired. Don't be so defensive. But his expression doesn't soften. There's something in his gaze now, suspicion edged with fear. He knows she's hiding something, but not what. Good, she thinks. Let him wonder. By mid-morning, she is in Bennett's office. The solicitor rises as she enters, surprise flickering across his face. Your Grace, I didn't expect you so soon. Charlotte closes the door behind her. We need to discuss an amendment to my accounts. Bennett gestures for her to sit. Of course. What sort of amendment? She lays the folded note, the one she wrote the night before, on his desk. This must be done discreetly. £50 monthly to Miss Latham of Chelsea. From my account, not Edward's. Bennett scans the page, his brow furrowing. Miss Latham, understanding dawns quickly. I see. Do you? Charlotte asks coolly. Yes, Bennett says. And if I may say so, Your Grace, this is an act of great generosity. It's an act of prudence, she replies. The woman is harmless. The child, she pauses, her tone softening, is innocent. If they're protected quietly, Edward has no reason to make desperate choices. Bennett regards her thoughtfully. You're defusing a scandal before it ignites. I'm ensuring that I control the match, she corrects. Not him. When she leaves the office, she feels strangely lighter. 4 months, her every move had been reaction, defending herself from Edward's arrogance, society's judgment, and London's cruelty. But this is strategy. By protecting Miss Latham and her son, she gains something far greater than vengeance, moral ground. And if Edward ever learns that she funds his mistress and heir, the humiliation will be exquisite. That evening, a small dinner is held at Harrington House for the Pembrokes and Lord Ravenscroft, one of Edward's allies turned gossip merchant. Charlotte knows it's not a social evening. It's a test. Edward intends to prove he still commands his household. She intends to show the opposite. The dining room glows with candlelight, the silver polished to a mirror's gleam. The conversation starts lightly, weather, Parliament, rumors of the Queen's next public appearance. Then, as wine fills glasses, Lord Ravenscroft begins his usual probing. I hear, Duchess, he says smoothly, that you've taken quite an interest in charitable causes for women and children. Admirable, though quite modern. Modernity is England's next inheritance, Charlotte says evenly, and I've no wish to see it squandered. Ravenscroft chuckles. I suspect your husband prefers a more traditional approach. Edward glances at her, testing. Charlotte smiles sweetly. Oh, Edward adores progress, in moderation of course. Laughter ripples around the table, but beneath the sound she sees the flicker in her husband's eyes, confusion, maybe unease. She's dancing too elegantly for him to catch. As the men retreat to the study after dinner, Lady Pembroke leans in. You've grown bolder, my dear. Charlotte's smile remains poised. Not bolder, just better informed. Later, when the guests have gone and the house quiets, Edward confronts her in the hall. What was that performance tonight? Performance? She repeats. You invited your jackal of a friend to test me. I simply made sure I bit first. Don't twist my words. Then stop feeding them to men like Ravenscroft, she snaps, her calm finally cracking. Edward steps closer, his voice dropping to a dangerous whisper. You forget yourself, Charlotte. I am still your husband. She looks up at him, eyes cold as glass. And you are a husband who keeps a child in Chelsea. The silence that follows is absolute. His face drains of color. You. Yes, she says softly. I know. He staggers back a half step, the mask of composure shattering. Who told you? It doesn't matter. What matters is that I've seen him. He's a lovely boy. Deserves better than to be hidden like a sin. You had no right, Edward says, voice breaking between rage and fear. I had every right, she replies. That child bears my husband's name even if you won't give it to him. He grips the back of a chair, knuckles white. If you breathe a word of this. She interrupts, quiet but firm. I won't. But if you harm that woman or child, financially, socially, in any way, I will destroy you. Do you understand me? For a moment he can't find words. Then finally he says, you wouldn't dare. She steps closer, her voice a whisper of steel. Try me. Edward storms out, slamming the door behind him. Charlotte remains standing in the stillness, her pulse steady. She knows she's crossed a line from which there's no return. But she also knows this. He'll never again look at her as something fragile to control. He'll look at her the way men look at storms. With fear. With awe. And with the knowledge that once unleashed, there's no stopping her. That night, she writes a short note to Catherine. The game has changed. He knows that I know. But the child is safe. It seems the Duchess of Harrington has finally learned how to wield mercy as a weapon. She seals it with her crest, not Edward's. Harrington House has grown quiet, too quiet. The servants speak in whispers, glancing nervously at closed doors. Even the echo of footsteps seems to hesitate before crossing the marble floors. Edward has changed. In the days following their confrontation, he stops pretending civility. His charm, once his weapon, has dulled into silence. He eats little, drinks more. The stack of letters on his desk grows taller by the day, unanswered, unopened, like tombstones of a crumbling empire. Charlotte watches the unraveling from a measured distance. She no longer feels fear, only inevitability. The man who once prided himself on control now stumbles beneath its absence. And yet, she knows she cannot let him collapse completely. Not yet. If Edward falls, the name falls with him. And the name, Harrington, is still the armor she wears in this world. 3 nights later, she hears him pacing in the study. The low thud of boots, the clink of glass. Then a crash, the unmistakable sound of something thrown against the wall. She rises, wraps her silk robe around her, and goes downstairs. Edward stands amid shards of crystal and scattered papers. His hair is disheveled, his eyes bloodshot. The scent of brandy hangs thick in the air. "Couldn't sleep?" she asks softly. He turns, startled. "Do you enjoy spying on me now?" "I enjoy knowing when my husband is destroying the furniture I paid for." He glares at her, hatred and humiliation tangled in his gaze. "You've poisoned everything. My name, my reputation, my life." "You did that yourself," Charlotte says calmly. "I simply stopped pretending not to see." He laughs bitterly. "Do you think society worships you now? That your little committees and charities make you untouchable? They'll turn on you, Charlotte. They always do." "Perhaps," she says. "But at least they'll have to look up when they do it." His hand tightens around the glass. For a moment she thinks he might throw it. But instead he drains it and slams it down. "You've ruined me," he says. "Do you understand that? Without your dowry I'm finished. The estates are drowning in debt. The creditors are circling. And now, thanks to your meddling, I can't even sell half the properties without the Queen's approval." Charlotte folds her arms. "Then perhaps it's time you learn to live like the rest of us, within limits." He stares at her, breathing hard, the fury in him flickering like a candle fighting for oxygen. "You think this is victory? When I go down, I'll take you with me." "No," she says quietly. "You'll do as I say, and you'll survive." He barks a humorless laugh. "And why in God's name would I ever obey you?" "Because I saved you," she says simply. His brow furrows. "Saved me?" "Yes." She steps closer, her voice calm, controlled. "I know about the child. The woman in Chelsea. I know what you've been paying her. And I know how easily that scandal could ruin you. But I haven't told anyone, not Catherine, not Bennett, not even the newspapers that would pay a fortune for it. I've protected you, Edward." He freezes, color draining from his face. "I'm funding her now," Charlotte continues, "discreetly through my accounts. Your son will never want for food or shelter. And neither will your name." He stares at her as though she struck him. "You're lying." She meets his eyes. "Am I?" He searches her face, looking for cruelty, but finds only composure. "Why?" he whispers. "Why would you do that after everything?" Charlotte studies him for a long moment before answering. "Because I'm not you." The words hang between them, not shouted, not cruel, just true. He sinks into a chair, the weight of it all pressing down. "It's over then, isn't it?" he murmurs. "Whatever we were." Charlotte shakes her head slowly. "We were never anything, Edward. You needed money. I needed protection. We made a bargain neither of us honored. This is what remains." He looks up, eyes glassy. "And what remains, Charlotte?" "Dignity," she says. "If you can hold on to it." The next morning, London wakes to a new rumor, quiet but persistent. The Duke of Harrington is unwell. Exhaustion. Overwork. The burden of estate affairs. Charlotte knows it's her doing. A whisper planted carefully through Catherine's network. Sympathy, not scandal. It buys Edward time. And it buys her control. The creditors hold off, believing recovery is coming. The Queen's Circle sends polite notes of concern. Invitations shift from Edward's name to hers. In every social column it is now. The Duchess of Harrington attended. The Duchess hosted. The Duchess contributed. Edward is fading from public life. Charlotte is ascending. Late one evening, Bennet calls at the house. The Duke's financial situation is dire, he tells her privately. If he continues as he is, bankruptcy is inevitable within the year. Charlotte nods slowly. Then it's time the Harrington estates had a new steward. Bennet blinks. You mean? Yes, she says firmly. I'll assume control. Quietly. He'll agree. And if he doesn't? She looks past the solicitor toward the fire. Then I'll remind him who still owns the silence that protects him. When she enters Edward's study that night, he doesn't look up. He's staring into the fire, half a man wrapped in smoke and regret. I've spoken to Bennet, she says. You'll sign the transfer of management tomorrow. I'll handle the estate accounts. He doesn't protest. He only mutters, do what you want, Charlotte. You already have. She stands in the doorway, watching the flames dance across the silver on his desk. Reflections of everything they once pretended to be. This isn't about revenge, she says quietly. It's about preservation. He doesn't answer. When she leaves, he's still staring into the fire, his shadow long and uncertain behind her. That night, alone in her room, Charlotte opens her journal and writes one line. The Harrington legacy survives because I willed it to. She closes the book and blows out the candle. For the first time since crossing the Atlantic, she feels no fear, only purpose. Edward may still hold the title, but she holds the future. Morning light spills through the tall windows of Harrington House, washing everything in pale gold. The city beyond hums, hansom cabs clatter, bells ring from St. James's, and the pulse of London life moves on as if nothing extraordinary is happening. But inside, everything has changed. Charlotte sits at the head of the long mahogany table in Edward's study, her study now. The ledgers are open before her, the inkpot centered neatly, papers aligned with military precision. Where Edward's chaos once ruled, order has been restored. Stevens, her lady's maid, enters quietly with tea. The solicitor awaits you, Your Grace. Send him in, Charlotte says without looking up. George Bennet steps inside, hat in hand, posture respectful. Your Grace. Good morning, Mr. Bennet. Let's begin. He lays the documents on the table, official, stamped, sealed. The transfer of financial authority for the Harrington estates. One signature from Edward, witnessed discreetly that morning, has changed everything. Charlotte reads every line carefully. Edward has relinquished active management for reasons of health and confidence in the Duchess's stewardship. It is phrased delicately, legally, and most importantly, publicly acceptable. She signs. The sound of pen against paper is quiet, but in that silence echoes centuries of change. Congratulations, Your Grace, Bennet says. You now control one of the oldest estates in England. Charlotte closes the ledger with a soft thud. No, Mr. Bennet, she says calmly. I preserve it. That's different. He studies her with something like admiration. You're aware, of course, that this makes you quite unprecedented. Unprecedented women are merely those who stopped asking permission, Charlotte replies. Later that afternoon, she walks the estate grounds. The city gives way to manicured lawns, fountains, and marble statues of past Harringtons, all men. The lineage of conquerors, soldiers, politicians. She stops before one carved figure. Lord Geoffrey Harrington, 1684 to 1742, defender of crown and country. Defender, she murmurs, her gloved fingers tracing the inscription. And I suppose I'm the defender of the ledger. But in truth, she's defending more than that, the right to exist as something beyond ornamental. Lady Catherine Ashford finds her there, as always knowing where to appear at the perfect time. So, Catherine says, linking her arm through Charlotte's. It's done then. You've taken control. I have, Charlotte answers. Edward signed this morning. And how did he take it? As one accepts amputation, Charlotte says dryly. With pain, resignation, and a touch of brandy. Catherine laughs softly. My dear, you are becoming quite British. Charlotte smiles faintly. God forbid. They walk in companionable silence for a moment before Catherine speaks again. You understand what this means, don't you? You're not simply managing an estate. You're rewriting the rules. Women don't hold financial authority in their own names. Not here, not yet. Then perhaps it's time they did, Charlotte replies. And if my name must be whispered for it to happen, then let them whisper. That evening, she attends her first major event without Edward, a charity gala at Devonshire House. The invitation, notably, is addressed solely to Her Grace, the Duchess of Harrington. It is more than etiquette. It is recognition. When she enters, conversation dips. Heads turn. The gossip mill spins faster than the string quartet's bow. Some smile warmly, allies like Emma Winchester and Clara Davenport. Others whisper behind their fans, eager for scandal. Charlotte glides through them all with serene confidence. Every movement deliberate, every word measured. She has learned to control the narrative before anyone else can write it for her. At the gala, she announces the creation of the Harrington Trust for Women's Education, a fund using a small, discrete portion of her secured fortune. The announcement sends a ripple through the crowd. A duchess funding women's colleges? Murmurs Lady Dunmore, scandalized. Better that than funding her husband's gambling, replies Clara under her breath. The ripple becomes applause. Later, as the evening draws to a close, Lord James Winters finds her by the balcony overlooking the gardens. You've caused quite a stir, he says, smiling. Half the men in that room are terrified and the other half are intrigued. Then I must be doing something right, Charlotte answers, her tone amused. He studies her face, poised, radiant in candlelight. Do you realize what you've done tonight? I've written a few checks. No, he says softly. You've declared independence. In public. And they applauded you for it. She looks out at the London skyline, the glow of gas lamps stretching into infinity. Perhaps they're finally learning what independence looks like. Or perhaps, he says, they're learning what it looks like when you do it. The compliment lingers in the night air, dangerous, unspoken, yet undeniable. Charlotte turns to him, eyes steady. You should be careful, Lord James. People will start to think you admire me. He smiles faintly. Let them think what they like. I admire courage wherever I find it. She inclines her head. Then I hope you continue to look closely. There's more to come. When Charlotte returns home that night, the house feels different. Lighter somehow. Edward's absence no longer looms like a shadow. It simply is. Stevens helps her remove her gown and unpin her hair. You looked magnificent tonight, Your Grace, she says softly. Charlotte smiles at her reflection in the mirror, calm, self-assured, powerful. Thank you, Stevens. And tell the staff they may rest easier. The household is secure. Yes, Your Grace, the maid replies, curtsying deeply. When she is alone, Charlotte opens her ledger, not Edward's but her own, and writes a single entry at the top of a fresh page. Assets, confidence, allies, purpose. Liabilities, none worth noting. She closes the book and looks toward the window, where the city lights shimmer like distant constellations. For the first time, she realizes she is no longer surviving. She is leading. And in a world that never intended women like her to lead, that may be the most radical act of all. London society adores a new sensation, and Charlotte Harrington has become precisely that, a paradox wrapped in silk and defiance. A duchess who speaks at charity boards. A wife who manages estates. A woman who smiles like she knows more than the men around her ever will. Her name appears in every gossip column from the Times to the Illustrated London News. The Duchess of Harrington is said to possess a mind for numbers unusual in her sex. Her Grace has been seen dining without her husband, a shocking display of independence. Rumors suggest she has taken a special interest in matters of education and commerce. Each sentence is wrapped in courtesy but weighted with warning. Because power in a woman is never admired without fear. At the morning table, Catherine Ashford lays the newspapers before Charlotte. They've begun their campaign, she says. Half the city wants to worship you. The other half wants to burn you quietly in scandal. Charlotte folds the paper neatly. Then I must stay precisely between them, visible but untouchable. Catherine studies her friend. You're playing a dangerous game. Every game worth winning is, Charlotte replies. She pours herself another cup of tea, calm as marble, but beneath the surface her mind runs like a racing engine, because she knows Catherine is right. The whispers are not harmless. They are traps, soft, polite traps designed to remind her that a woman's victories are tolerated only when they serve someone else. That afternoon, she meets with Bennett in her study. He brings more than documents this time, he brings news. Your Grace, he says carefully, you should be aware that certain members of the Duke's circle are displeased. Displeased is a charming word for men who are losing money, Charlotte says, leaning back. Which one of them finally decided to stop pretending civility? Lord Ravenscroft, Bennett admits. He's been spreading word that your financial dealings are irregular, that perhaps your father's fortune wasn't as legitimate as it seemed. Charlotte's expression doesn't change. A lie. Of course, but lies have legs in this city. He's gambling that if enough people question your integrity, the Queen's circle will withdraw their favor. Charlotte's jaw tightens. And Edward. Bennett hesitates. He has not contradicted Ravenscroft. For the first time, Charlotte feels something cold bloom in her chest. Betrayal no longer stings, it corrodes. She rises slowly, crossing to the window where the rain streaks the glass like tears. He's forgotten that without me, the creditors will devour him whole. Bennett inclines his head. Shall I take steps to refute the gossip? Charlotte shakes her head. No, that's what they expect. Instead, we'll feed it, just enough to make it confusing. If they can't separate rumor from fact, they'll hesitate to attack at all. Bennett smiles faintly. A lesson from your father, perhaps? From Wall Street, she says. When the market shakes, the calm trader wins. That night, a discreet note arrives from Lord James Winters. Ravenscroft has wagered a fortune on your downfall. He's hosting a private game at the Grafton Club tomorrow, your husband among the guests. Be careful. Men who gamble with cards often gamble with reputations. Charlotte reads the note twice, then burns it in the fireplace. The next morning, she dresses not for society but for strategy, black silk, severe, with a single diamond pin at her collar. A widow's restraint without the widowhood. At noon, she steps into her carriage. To the Grafton Club, she tells her driver. The butler nearly drops his monocle when she arrives. Your Grace, ladies are not. I'm not here as a lady, she interrupts coolly. Inform the Duke that his wife wishes to speak with him. Now. Moments later, the door opens and silence falls. Edward, Lord Ravenscroft, and two other men sit around a table littered with cards, chips, and half-empty glasses. Charlotte, Edward begins, voice brittle. This is highly improper. So is defaming one's own wife, she says evenly. Ravenscroft laughs, leaning back in his chair. Ah, the Duchess herself. Come to defend your accounts, have you? Charlotte steps closer, her heels clicking sharply on the marble. No, I've come to call your bluff. He smirks. You think society will side with a woman over a peer of the realm? I don't need society, Charlotte says. I need the truth. And the truth, Lord Ravenscroft, is that your own debts to the Harrington estates exceed £10,000. The room stills. How? Your account books are quite enlightening, she continues, pulling a folded paper from her reticule. Forged signatures, falsified collateral, and, oh yes, transfers through your gaming club. If I were less polite, I'd call it embezzlement. Ravenscroft's face drains of color. You can't prove. I already have. She lays the document on the table. This is a copy of the notice Bennett will file should I fail to receive full repayment within 1 week. Of course, once it reaches Parliament's Committee on Financial Ethics, your reputation will collapse faster than your credit. Edward stares at her, a mixture of horror and awe. Ravenscroft sputters. You wouldn't dare. Charlotte smiles faintly. Oh, my dear Lord Ravenscroft, I've already done it. She turns to Edward. And as for you, the next time you choose your allies, choose men who can afford to lose. With that, she leaves. By evening, the story spreads like wildfire through Mayfair. The Duchess of Harrington confronted Lord Ravenscroft over a private debt, and won. The lady possesses not only beauty and breeding, but the mind of a banker. Some whisper she will soon be richer than the crown itself. Ravenscroft flees London within the week. Edward retreats to the country, citing ill health. And Charlotte, poised, polished, and utterly composed, sits at the center of the storm she has mastered. Catherine visits days later, grinning. "You've done it again. The wolves came for you and you taught them to fetch." Charlotte laughs softly, the sound warm but edged with steel. "I don't tame wolves, Catherine. I let them believe they still have teeth." She looks out the window toward the skyline, the setting sun gilding the rooftops. "Let them whisper," she murmurs. "Every whisper only carries my name further." And somewhere in the distance, the bells of St. Paul's ring, not for scandal but for survival turned to sovereignty. The letter arrives in the early morning mist, delivered by a royal courier in full livery. The gold seal, unmistakable, glints against the pale blue envelope. Charlotte holds it for a long moment before breaking it open. Her Majesty requests the presence of Her Grace, the Duchess of Harrington, at Windsor Castle next Thursday for luncheon and private consultation. "Private consultation," she murmurs aloud. The words are both an honor and a warning. Stevens, standing nearby, lowers her eyes. "Your Grace, such an invitation is most unusual." "Unusual," Charlotte says, "is becoming a habit." She folds the letter neatly, places it on her desk, and feels the weight of history press around her. Catherine Ashford arrives within the hour, her curiosity unmasked. "The Queen herself," she exclaims. "You realize what this means? Half of Parliament would sell their estates for such favor." Charlotte's gaze stays on the sealed letter. "Favor is one thing, Catherine. Scrutiny is another." "You've become too important to ignore," Catherine says softly. "And the crown never ignores what it cannot control." Charlotte nods slowly. "Then I suppose it's time to see what Her Majesty truly wants." The morning of the audience dawns crisp and clear. The carriage gleams black and gold, the horses wear royal plumes. Charlotte sits within, her gown understated, slate silk trimmed with pearl, a balance between deference and strength. The ride to Windsor is quiet. Each turn of the wheel draws her closer to the heart of the empire, and the woman who rules it. At the gates, guards salute. The courtyard gleams like polished stone. Charlotte steps down, every movement measured. Inside the castle's great hall, a lady-in-waiting greets her. "Her Majesty will receive you in the green drawing room." Charlotte follows through a maze of portraits and marble until the doors open on a vision of history. Queen Victoria seated at a small table near the window, sunlight glinting off the jewels that dot her black dress like constellations. "Your Majesty," Charlotte murmurs, curtsying deeply. "Rise, Duchess," the Queen says, her voice firm but not unkind. "Come sit. I dislike craning my neck to speak." Charlotte obeys, taking the seat indicated across from her. Tea is poured, silence settles. "You have caused quite a stir, Lady Harrington," the Queen begins. "I'm aware of the whispers, Your Majesty." The Queen's eyes sharpen, almost amused. "Whispers? My dear, it is more of a chorus. You've outmaneuvered men twice your age, confronted Lord Ravenscroft publicly, and taken control of an ancient estate without scandal. Admirable and alarming." Charlotte meets the Queen's gaze. "I did what was necessary, ma'am." "Necessary," the Queen repeats, tasting the word. "You remind me of another young woman who once found necessity inconvenient to men." "Your Majesty?" "Myself," the Queen says simply. Charlotte blinks, startled. I meant no challenge to authority." The Queen chuckles. "Nonsense. Every act of independence is a challenge to someone's authority. I merely wished to see if you understood that." "I believe I do," Charlotte answers. Victoria studies her in silence for a long moment. "Tell me, Duchess, what do you intend to do with this influence of yours?" Charlotte hesitates, then chooses honesty. "Use it to make women harder to silence. I've learned that ignorance is the leash that binds us. Education cuts it." The Queen leans back. "You speak like a politician." "I speak like a woman who has paid dearly to be heard," Charlotte replies. For the first time, the Queen's expression softens. "And your husband? How fares the Duke?" Charlotte answers carefully. "Recovering his health in the country, ma'am." Victoria's eyes glint. "Ah, how fortunate for England that her men so often fall ill when women grow capable." A pause, then the faintest smile. "You will continue your philanthropic endeavors. The crown will not hinder you. But be wise, Duchess. The higher one climbs, the colder the air becomes." Charlotte bows her head. "I will remember that, Your Majesty." As she departs Windsor, Charlotte feels a strange mix of triumph and unease. She has survived the Queen's scrutiny, even earned a measure of respect. But she senses the warning beneath the praise. Visibility is power, but also exposure. In the carriage back to London, she unwraps a small envelope handed to her by the lady-in-waiting as she left. Inside is a note written in the Queen's own hand. Courage in a woman is not unbecoming. But beware the envy it invites. Rule your world, Duchess, before it rules you. Charlotte traces the signature, Victoria R., and exhales slowly. That evening, Catherine and Emma gather in her salon, eager for news. Well? Catherine demands. Did she scold you or knight you? Neither, Charlotte says, pouring wine. She warned me. Of what? Emma asks. Of men, Charlotte replies. And of women who wish they were men. They laugh softly, but Charlotte's mind is elsewhere, already calculating, already cautious. Because the Queen's approval has elevated her beyond gossip. But it has also painted a target across her back. And in London, targets are rarely missed. Later that night, Charlotte stands at her window, the note from the Queen resting on her desk beside her ledger. Outside, fog curls through the gaslit streets, soft, deceptive, beautiful. Just like power. She whispers to herself, rule your world before it rules you. And for the first time, she realizes that she no longer stands merely against her husband or society. She stands among them, one player in a grander game than she ever imagined. Autumn comes early that year. The air grows crisp, the city sharper, as if even London senses the shift in power. 4 months, Edward Harrington has been absent from the public eye, recovering, or hiding, in the countryside. Society whispers that he has taken ill or gone mad or both. Charlotte lets them whisper. Silence, when guided, becomes its own kind of story. Then one morning, Stevens bursts into the drawing room, face pale. Your Grace, she says breathlessly. His Grace has returned. Charlotte looks up from her correspondence, calm despite the sudden racing of her pulse. To London? To the house, ma'am. He's here. For a long moment, Charlotte doesn't move. Then she sets down her pen. Very well. Inform Mrs. Hughes that the Duke will dine with me this evening, and have the staff prepare the blue dining room. Stevens hesitates. Shall I alert Mr. Bennet? No, Charlotte says after a pause. Not yet. Edward arrives that evening just as the lamps are being lit. He looks older, thinner, his skin drawn, his once perfect composure replaced by a faint tremor of desperation. Charlotte, he says, stepping into the hall as if uncertain he's still welcome. Your Grace, she greets evenly. You look improved. He gives a hollow laugh. Do I? I've seen better days. Yes, she replies. We both have. For a moment, neither speaks. Then she gestures toward the dining room. Shall we? Dinner passes in uneasy civility. The silver glints between them like a barrier. The wine goes untouched by both. When the servants withdraw, Edward finally speaks. You've been busy, he says quietly. I have, Charlotte replies. The estates required it. The Queen summoned you. I read as much in the papers. She did. And? She approves, Charlotte says. For now. Edward studies her. And am I still Duke? Or have you replaced me entirely? You still wear the title, she answers. Though I find it fits more loosely than before. His lips twitch, a flash of the man she once met, proud and arrogant and frightened all at once. You always had a talent for cruelty. No, she says softly. Only for truth. He looks away, jaw tightening. The creditors are pressing again. They want assurances. And you came to me for them, she finishes. I came, he says, meeting her eyes, because you're the only one who can still save this family. Charlotte lets the words hang. This family, she repeats. Do you mean your son in Chelsea? Or your estate in Mayfair? He flinches. You've no right. I have every right, she cuts in. I paid for both. Silence falls, thick as velvet. Then Edward's tone changes, lower, desperate. Charlotte, listen to me. I can fix this. The government is reorganizing several railway contracts. If I can secure one, it will. Gambling again, she says flatly. But this time with politics instead of cards. It's not gambling, it's opportunity, he insists. You have influence now, through the Queen, through your charities. If you were to mention my name to Lord Bevington. No. He freezes. No. You will not use my reputation to launder yours, she says. If you wish to redeem yourself, do it with action, not with my name. He leans forward, voice sharp. Don't you see? We're bound together, you and I. You can't rise while I fall. The scandal would drown you too. Charlotte's eyes are cold steel. Then learn to swim. The fire crackles in the silence that follows. Finally, Edward sighs. You've changed. You said that before, she replies. This time, he says, I think I almost admire it. Charlotte tilts her head. Almost. He stands pacing. Do you think I don't regret what I did? The debts, the woman, the lies. God, Charlotte, I regret all of it. But you took everything I thought made me powerful and made it yours. You call that theft, she says. I call it survival. He stops at the mantel, staring into the flames. Then perhaps survival is all that's left for either of us. When he turns back, his expression is strange, somewhere between resignation and resolve. The creditors will come knocking within a month. When they do, I'll face them. But if this house burns, I'll not drag you down with it. She studies him carefully. For the first time, his voice carries no manipulation, only exhaustion. Edward, she says finally, whatever remains of us, let it end with dignity. That's all I ask. He nods once, a soldier's gesture of truce. Then it shall. That night, Charlotte stands at her window, watching his carriage disappear into the London fog. The city swallows him whole as it always has. Catherine's words echo in her mind. The higher one climbs, the colder the air becomes. She feels it now, the chill of altitude. The Duke's fall no longer terrifies her, but it reminds her how thin the line between power and ruin truly is. Later in her journal, she writes, He has returned, but not as he was. The world is smaller for him now and larger for me. I do not hate him. I do not love him. But I see him clearly at last, and that is its own kind of freedom. She sets down her pen, the ink drying in the lamplight. Outside, a clock strikes midnight. The Duchess of Harrington is awake still, staring into the dark, already sensing that the end of one game means the beginning of another. The rain hasn't stopped for days. It streaks the windows of Harrington House like tears that refuse to dry, and the city outside feels restless. Streets slick, rumors slicker. Charlotte sits in her study beneath the soft hiss of the storm, reading a letter that smells faintly of smoke and desperation. Your Grace. His Grace has mortgaged a portion of the country estate without consent. The funds were used to secure certain political investments tied to Lord Bevington's railway consortium. The matter has reached the press. I urge immediate discretion. G. Bennet. Charlotte folds the letter carefully, though her hands tremble. Edward. Always Edward. Even after everything, he has found a new way to burn the remnants of their fortune. A knock breaks her thoughts. Stevens enters pale. Your Grace, there are men outside. Reporters. Of course there are. Charlotte rises slowly. Tell them I will issue a statement shortly. She waits until Stevens withdraws, then sinks back into her chair. Her gaze falls upon the ledger before her, the neat columns of figures she once thought represented stability. But even the most disciplined accounts can't restrain chaos when it wears a man's name. By noon, the newspapers scream. Duke of Harrington implicated in railway fraud. Aristocratic speculation. Public funds lost. Where is the Duchess? The last headline lands hardest. It isn't a question, it's a challenge. Catherine arrives at once, her cloak dripping rain. It's spreading fast. The Bevington contracts collapsed this morning. Edward's name is on 3 of them. Charlotte stands at the fireplace, watching the smoke curl upward. So the empire of debt finally catches fire. Catherine hesitates. There's talk of an inquiry. Parliament will want a scapegoat. And they'll choose the American Duchess, Charlotte finishes quietly. Her friend nods grimly. Unless you move first. That evening she calls a meeting, not of ladies but of power. In her drawing room sit 3 men who once doubted her. George Bennet, the banker Mr. Tresham, and Lord James Winters. The air is thick with tension, the kind that smells of ink and ruined reputations. Charlotte begins without preamble. Gentlemen, you've seen the papers. I need to know if the Harrington name is salvageable. Bennet adjusts his spectacles. Your accounts are separate, Your Grace. Legally, you are insulated. But public opinion doesn't understand the difference. Winters adds softly, "They see a single household, not two worlds at war." Charlotte nods. "Then we must make them see what I choose them to see." Sam frowns. "Which is?" "That the Duchess of Harrington is the rescuer, not the ruin." The next day she does what no woman of her rank has ever done. She calls a press conference. In the grand foyer of Harrington House, beneath portraits of stern ancestors, Charlotte stands before a semicircle of journalists, all men, all hungry for blood. "Gentlemen," she begins, her voice clear, "you've printed much about my husband. Allow me to clarify the record." Pencils scratch furiously. "The Duke of Harrington engaged in certain ventures without my knowledge or consent. Those ventures have failed. However, the Harrington estates remain solvent under my management. Not a single tenant, laborer, or tradesman will lose his due. The debts are mine to honor because I am Harrington now." The room stills. The men exchange glances. This is not the frightened Duchess they expected. A reporter dares, "Your Grace, do you mean you will pay your husband's debts?" "I mean," Charlotte says, her gaze cutting through the crowd, "that I will not allow centuries of English pride to crumble because a few men mistook greed for genius. The name will endure not because of inheritance, but because of competence." Another man asks, "And your husband, madam? Where is he?" Charlotte pauses just long enough to control the silence. "Resting, as he should. I will handle the rest." The next morning's headline reads, "Duchess defies ruin, Lady Harrington saves estate. A woman of iron and silk." The scandal turns on itself. Instead of shame, she becomes fascination. The city whispers a new story, not of the Duke's failure but of the Duchess's resolve. But Edward is not silent. A week later, he storms into Harrington House unannounced, rain dripping from his coat. "You humiliated me," he spits. "You made me look weak before the entire country." "You are weak," Charlotte says. "I merely let the world see what I've lived with. You think they love you now? They'll turn. They always turn. You'll learn that." "Perhaps," she says. "But when they do, I'll still be standing." He stares at her, eyes bloodshot, voice trembling. "I made you a duchess." Charlotte rises slowly, every inch of her composed and dangerous. "And I made you relevant. Let's not pretend who saved whom." For a moment she thinks he'll strike her, but he only laughs, a hollow, breaking sound. "God help me, Charlotte. You're the only person I've ever truly feared." She meets his gaze steadily. "Then perhaps you've finally learned respect." He says nothing more, only turns and walks out into the rain. That night, Charlotte sits by the fire, exhaustion washing over her. Catherine's words echo in her mind, "Power always demands its price." She looks at her reflection in the glass, regal, unshaken, alone. The Duchess of Harrington has won again. But victory, she realizes, tastes increasingly like loneliness. The winter of 1893 arrives like a closing curtain, cold, deliberate, inevitable. Snow drapes over the roofs of London, muting the city's noise, softening even the gossip. The fire in Harrington House burns constantly now, its steady crackle the only reminder that warmth still exists somewhere within these stone walls. Charlotte sits in her study, the same place where months ago she uncovered the first secrets of her husband's ruin. The ledgers are gone now, locked away in the vault at Bennett's office, replaced by correspondence from universities, foundations, and editors. Her new venture, the Harrington Fund for Women's Education, has become a movement. Letters arrive daily from Manchester factory girls, Scottish scholars, and even the daughters of American tycoons, thanking her for opening a door they were never meant to see. Still, the air carries something heavier. An ending. Bennett arrives one afternoon, hat in hand, his expression unusually grave. "Your Grace," he says quietly, "there's been a development." Charlotte sets aside her papers. "Edward." He nods. "He's dead. Carriage accident on the road from Brighton. The driver survived. The Duke did not." For a long moment, Charlotte simply stares at him, expression unreadable. The words feel both distant and close, like echoes through glass. "How?" she asks at last. The carriage overturned. The roads were wet, the horse startled. It was instant. Charlotte's eyes flicker toward the fire. "Instant," she repeats, her tone neither grief nor relief. Bennett clears his throat. "I'll make the necessary arrangements." The title passes to the nearest male cousin, but the estates remain under your trusteeship. He left no legitimate heirs. None legitimate, Charlotte murmurs. Bennett hesitates. Of course. When he leaves, the house feels impossibly quiet. The walls that once held Edward's shadow now seem hollow. And yet, instead of emptiness, Charlotte feels something else rise within her. Not triumph, not sorrow, but release. The funeral is private. Rain falls steadily, the kind of unrelenting drizzle England seems to reserve for tragedy and irony alike. Society comes, dressed in black and curiosity. The papers call her the Iron Widow. The Queen sends a wreath. Charlotte stands at the edge of the grave, veiled and still. When the final shovel of earth falls, she turns and walks away before the others have moved. Catherine joins her halfway down the path. Do you feel lighter? Charlotte exhales slowly. I feel unburdened. He was a difficult man, Catherine says gently. No, Charlotte replies. He was the inevitable one. Every woman like me marries a version of him first, before learning to become herself. Catherine squeezes her hand. And now, Charlotte says, eyes lifting toward the gray sky, I begin again. Weeks pass. The gossip fades. The new Duke claims his title but not the house, preferring Scotland to London. Harrington House becomes Charlotte's alone. She moves through its halls like a queen through her own creation. The portraits of long-dead men watch silently as she replaces the one above the grand staircase, Edward's portrait, with her father's. Beneath it, a plaque reads, William Miller, who taught his daughter to count when the world told her not to. One morning, she receives a letter bearing the royal seal once more. Her Majesty commends the Duchess of Harrington for her continued service to education and progress. A donation from the Crown shall be made to the Harrington Fund in recognition of her efforts. Charlotte reads it twice, then sets it aside. Recognition has lost its shine. Purpose is all that remains. That spring, she travels to New York for the first time in years. The city hums with life, raw, loud, unapologetic. She stands on the deck of the steamer as it docks, the skyline shimmering in the sun, and feels the Atlantic wind tear through her veil. A reporter waiting at the harbor calls out, Your Grace, is it true you'll stay in America? Charlotte smiles faintly. A duchess doesn't stay anywhere. She builds. Months later, in a lecture hall at Columbia University, Charlotte stands before an audience of young women, students funded by her foundation. When I first crossed the Atlantic, she tells them, I thought I was entering a world of crowns and castles. I found instead a world of contracts and cages. Power, I learned, is never given. It must be taken, and then used not to rise above others, but to lift them beside you. Applause ripples through the hall. She continues, softer now. You will be told that ambition is unbecoming, that intellect is arrogance, that silence is grace. Do not believe them. The world fears women who can think, but it also needs them. That night, after the event, she walks alone through the quiet streets of Manhattan. The city smells of iron and rain, of engines and beginnings. A different kind of empire, younger, hungrier, freer. She stops by the river, the skyline reflected in the dark water. Somewhere across that same ocean lies the house that once held her cage. She whispers to the wind, Goodbye, Edward. Goodbye, England. The wind takes the words and scatters them like ashes. Months later, she returns briefly to London to close the last of her affairs. Catherine meets her at the harbor. Will you come back? Catherine asks. Charlotte smiles. I'll visit, but my work is there now, in the new world. You'll read about it soon enough. Catherine laughs through misting eyes. You always did like to write your own stories. Charlotte leans forward, kisses her cheek. Someone has to. On her final night in Harrington House, she walks through the empty rooms one last time. The silence feels less like loneliness now, more like peace. She stops in the study, runs her hand across the desk where everything began, the ledgers, the letters, the lies. Then she opens a new journal and writes her final entry. I was born Charlotte Miller. I became the Duchess of Harrington. But somewhere between the two I became myself. If history remembers me at all, let it be for that. She closes the book, sets it gently in the drawer and locks it. The key she slips into her pocket. Outside, the carriage waits to take her to the docks. As she steps through the door, dawn spills across the sky, a thin band of gold piercing the horizon. Charlotte pauses, looking back at the house that once defined her and now belongs only to memory. Then she smiles, quiet, certain, free. "The Harrington legacy will endure," she whispers. "But so will mine." And with that, the Duchess of Harrington walks into the light of a new world, leaving behind an old one finally at peace.